Doug, if you're talking to the rest of us, you're muted, buddy.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:30. It is Committee of the Whole, Monday, February 7th, 2022. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt Nation. And at this point in time, I'll ask if there's any objection. We'll go to item 2, the approval of the agenda, near-term agenda, long-term agenda, and the Committee of the Whole agenda from February 7th, 2022. And is there any objections to any of these agendas at this point in time? Seeing none, I will adopt all three. And I'm looking for a motion for the adoption of the minutes for the Committee of the Whole, January 17th of 2022.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councillor Day.
A reminder that we need to do a roll call for a virtual meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Day. So I'll start off from what I see here. Councillor Jensen, unmute yourself if I can get everyone to unmute. Okay, Councillor Jensen is here.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Baxter.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Present.
Councillor Day.
I'm here.
And Councillor Logan.
Chair, Councillor Logan does send his regrets. He had to work up Island today.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much. So moving on to item 3, adoption of the minutes, Committee of the Whole, January 17th, 2022. Can I get a motion from the floor, please, for adoption? Councillor Parkinson, thank you very much. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I will assume that that they're adopted as written. Item 4 will go straight into public participation. I believe we have 7 people registered to speak tonight. At this point in time, I just want to remind people that during public participation, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to present concerns or ask questions of council. Comments pertaining to the following matters that have been subject to a public hearing are prohibited at this meeting. Bylaw 1898, Cannabis Retail 1905 Souk Road. Bylaw 1908, CD 31, 3554 Ryder Hedgeville. And Bylaw 1912, CD 32, 791 Drummond Way. You're encouraged to make your views known. However, the following rules apply to all public participations. Public comments must be respectful to council, city staff, and other members of the public. And finally, inappropriate language, outbursts, or criticisms aimed at individuals or groups will not be tolerated. Because there's 7 speakers, I'll limit everyone to about 2.5 minutes apiece. And if I can call on Amanda, if you could let the first person in, thank you.
Okay, so our first speaker tonight is Ben Mycroft. Ben, could you please press *6 to unmute yourself?
Yes. Good evening, Amanda and committee and chair. It's Ben Mycroft from Gablecraft Homes. I'm primarily here tonight just to speak to the agenda item regarding Metchosin and Latoria signalization, which I'll speak to first. And I guess now is the time at the beginning rather than at the item itself, so I'll just go ahead. So I just wanted to, for the committee's benefit and I guess the public that's listening, I would just like to say that Gablecraft Homes has been busy in line with past consultation, we have continued to develop out our community, and Latoria South is well underway now, as anyone that lives in the neighborhood could attest to, and you can see plainly. We've got the retail village under construction. We have all of the main roads, the extension of Ryder Hesjedal Way, extension of Dunlin, and our new connection road down to Mechosin, all under construction at once, as well as several other subdivision phases. And per our agreement with the city, we are now ready to proceed with the construction works to build the signalized intersection at the intersection of Mechosin and Latoria Boulevard. We have been working closely with Seacliff Properties, and over the past 6 to 8 months have gone through a detailed design process with the city and involving Seacliff to design and secure approvals from the city for the implementation of a signalized intersection at Mechosin and Latoria, as well as all of the approach lanes, left turn bays, right turn bays, and further, we intend to proceed with the construction of the first phase of the 5-laning of Latoria Boulevard between Mechosin Road and Sparrowhawk, which would include the transit exchange that will serve Royal Bay. So that would be the 3 bus stops on the south side of the road and 2 bus stops on the north. And this will be the first step in securing the facilities that BC Transit needs in order to begin scheduling better transit service for Royal Bay. So very happy that we're finally at this stage here tonight where we have gone through the design process with the city. We have an intersection we're proud to present to this committee and council for consideration. It factors in extensively cycling improvements, significant cycling improvements over what is there today, strong consideration for pedestrians, strong consideration for the transit interoperability within the interchange, as well as intersection, as well as really through our traffic engineering, ensuring that we have a large ultimate condition so that this intersection will be built and will serve the community of Royal Bay and Colwood and the wider region well for many, many years to come. So if there are any questions from this committee, I'd be pleased to answer them now or at the time that you're considering our agenda item tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. One further item. I just wanted to speak, I guess, if it's my time. There are other items on the agenda tonight that I have an interest in. I guess just one, it's a statement and question around the community amenity contribution policy, the interim update. I think that our group welcomes the debate and discussion that the city is going through. I personally believe that it's time for this community to develop appropriate community amenity contribution policies that are attached to increased levels of service for things like parks. And I guess I just wanted to get a clarification question for staff for later, is just confirming, as it seems to indicate in the committee of the whole report from Jill Collinson, senior planner, that this new policy would apply to newly rezoned lands. And that's a question that can be answered later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Could you let the next speaker in, Amanda?
So our next speaker is Al Lenham. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your address for the record?
Yes, my name is Al Lehman. I live at 276 Portsmouth Drive in Colwood. My comments relate to item number 5.1 on the agenda regarding the Performing Arts Center. Those of you who are on council are all familiar with this proposal. I have lived in the Esquimalt Lagoon area of Colwood since 1973, almost 50 years. I raised 2 daughters here. One was a sports jock. The other was very involved in the arts. During my 40-plus year life here, I have watched our government leaders spend millions of our tax dollars, literally, on the construction and operation of sports facilities. I supported these initiatives, as did my sports-loving daughter. But during that same time, these same government leaders have spent almost $0 on the arts. In order to access arts facilities and activities for the rest of the family, we had to go to Sydney, downtown Victoria, and even as far as Oak Bay. It's long past time for this inequity to be dealt with. The City of Colwood tonight has an opportunity to begin a process of support for the arts by working with the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Center Society. And after decades of almost no activity, I want to say it is time to fish or cut bait. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Lehman. Next speaker, Amanda.
Okay, our next speaker is David Stocks. Can you please state your address for the record? Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
May I use the? I have pressed *6. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can, David. Thank you.
Okay, *6 does not work on my cell phone. I have no idea why.
Okay.
My name is David Stocks. My current address is 2600 Ferguson Road in Saanich. I recently moved to Saanich, but lived in Colwood for 13 years. I remain connected to Colwood as a member of the local Rotary Club and as a director of the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Center Society. We are proposing a solution to a problem that is well known. Numerous studies have agreed that there's a need for more performance venues on the West Shore, especially spaces that are accessible for diverse users, affordable for community groups, available for rent, not competing with, say, a school usage, and offering appropriate facilities. Now, cities such as Nanaimo, Chilliwack, and Kelowna have established such performance centers of the same type we're recommending. And those good people have guided our planning and have offered lots of help as we learn to operate the center. And local First Nations have also guided us over our years of planning. I'd like to point out that building and operating a center would be an economic boom for Colwood, approximately $50 million of construction and approximately $2 million per year of ongoing employment, good, clean jobs. Also, the center, the performance center will be a strong component of social infrastructure, the kind that builds community cohesion. Anyone who has served on the library board, I understand, has read a book called Palaces for the People, which explains in detail how civic infrastructure can actually save lives, for example, in heat waves. The City of Colwood website has some beautiful words about strong support for the arts. I commend you for putting those words on your website. They warm my heart. We are now asking you to implement those fine words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Next speaker, please, Amanda.
Okay, our next speaker is Julie Lawler. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your address?
Hello there, it's Julie Lawler calling. I'm the Executive Director of the West Shore Chamber of Commerce, which is based at 2830 Aldwyn Road. And I am calling in to speak in support of 5.1. The West Shore Chamber of Commerce exists to promote economic growth and participate in enriching the community, and this project does both. I'm quite sure you've all seen the many reports and information over the years put together by this very dedicated group of volunteers, and there is absolutely no question of the economic benefit of a performing arts center in the West Shore. This is where the growth is happening, as you all know, and yet we are desperately underserved in a number of areas, including in the arts. I'd also say that the work that Colwood has done in terms of its strategic plan and its official community plan really indicate that the Performing Arts Center would have a really appropriate home in Colwood. So I certainly support the recommendations that have been put together in the report to the Committee of the Whole, and the West Shore Chamber of Commerce fully supports this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Next one, Amanda.
The next person we have is Jim Bryant. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your address?
Hi, it's Jim Bryant, 2535 Legacy Ridge. I just called in tonight to observe.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Next caller, Amanda.
Our next caller is Brian White. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your address. Go ahead, Brian. Oh, I think you just muted yourself again. *6, and then you can speak. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now, Brian. Whoops, you muted yourself again.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Okay. Thank you. My address is 628 Kingsview Ridge in Langford. I'm a faculty member at Royal Roads University, and I've worked with the committee which is making the proposal for this Emily Carr Center for the Performing Arts. I'm putting forward that the university has already, our president has written a letter of support for this particular proposal, and I also obviously strongly support it as an urban geographer by training. There's 2 or 3 other elements I'd like to bring in, which I think are particularly important. One is that in terms of the official community plan, the movement towards an urban center for Colwood is, I think, absolutely critical. It ties in with the arguments about having some kind of a cultural opportunity there in the center of the community. And also the cultural precinct idea is something I worked on for several decades in North Vancouver with the Lower Lonsdale Key project. And I see the spectacular results that can happen once that particular combination is put together. I also worked on Whistler, which also moved in the same direction. And I think that we're certainly well overdue for having such an anchor in Colwood as well. So I think this is critical. It's both an economic and a social benefit, a huge social benefit. And I just want to say how enthusiastic I feel about it, and also how much enthusiasm I've seen in the committee which has been putting this concept forward for over a decade from now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brian. Next speaker, please, Amanda.
Next speaker is Mike Riley. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your address?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Riley. My address is 3362 Swindale Crescent. in Colwood. And I'm speaking in support of the proposal for the economic study for the Performing Arts Center. I sit on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. Investment in arts infrastructure impacts more than just the cultural components of our society. There is a direct economic benefit as well. According to a 2018 study from Statistics Canada, the economic impact of arts and culture in British Columbia, and the performing arts in particular, has been outpacing the growth in Canada overall of any other sector. Cultural GDP in British Columbia was $7.6 billion in 2018, representing a 2.7% of the province's total GDP. This figure represents a 17% growth since 2012, with the live performance sector having grown by 40% to $448 million during these 7 years. We often talk about the economic spin-off created by spending at surrounding retail and service businesses, and it's true that it's able to demonstrate those direct benefits to cafes, restaurants, gas stations, and other local vendors, but it goes much beyond that. The number of cultural jobs in BC was 98,050 during that period, or 4% of the total jobs in the province, which leads the country and represents a 21% increase from 2014. The economic impact in the performing arts is primarily derived from salaries and wages, and as Mr. Stock said, good green jobs, as well as earned revenue. Investing $30,000 in revising the study will be the next step in adding these increases in the GDP to our local economy. I urge the council to support the proposal for the revised study. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And I think, is that it, Amanda?
That's all we have tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. So move on to new business. And before I start on under new business, I don't know if everyone's had a chance to, I don't know if council's had a chance to look at the agenda for tomorrow night and the draft budget for the upcoming this fiscal year. We're going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure, budgetary pressure for this year. We're already sitting at almost 5.5%. And just the first two items alone, if they were approved, were sitting at 7%. And that's not including all the other items that we have to look at. So I just want to state that. I'm not trying to sway your vote one way or the other, but you know, it's a reality. And I just want to make sure that everyone was aware of that if they haven't had a chance to look at the draft budget. Okay, just moving on, I'll move on to 5.1. Jill Collinson, I'll ask you to introduce the Performing Arts Center.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I need to step out.
Right.
For this item.
Okay, so thanks very much, Councillor Baxter.
All right, I'll see you on the other side.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Chair, Ian Burhill here.
Okay, Ian. Is it are you Jill?
Yes. Unfortunately, our senior planner can't be with us tonight and sends her regrets, so I'll be filling in.
Not a problem.
Yeah. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian.
Great. So the report before you tonight seeks direction regarding advancing the concept of an arts and culture facility in Colwood and exploring the roles the city could play in supporting such a facility in its development and operations. The Juana Fuca Performing Arts Center, also known as PAX, will be presenting shortly after my introduction. And they're going to be talking about the work they've been doing to advance the concept of a community arts center in Colwood. Over the last decade, PAX has presented to Colwood multiple times to demonstrate needs, wants, and desires for an arts and culture facility in Colwood. In late 2020, the Stage 1 report commissioned by the CRD reported on its initiative to facilitate discussions on regional art facilities and made recommendations on regional strategies in this area. The Stage 1 report is included in tonight's report package as Appendix 1, and PAX's forthcoming presentation will touch on some of its highlights. Since the Stage 1 report in December 2020, the concept of a regional arts facility service has been working its way through the established process at the regional governance level at the Capital Regional District. If and when and how such a service will be levied via the CRD is yet to be determined. To advance the Arts Centre concept in Colwood, the city could support funds to engage a third-party professional services to support preferred location selection and concept refinement. This work would further explore the Arts Centre concept as a desired facility comprised of a theater, gallery, display, and workshop space for the performing, visual, and creative arts, and would result in a Colwood-specific considerations and recommendations as to how to move forward. So table 1 in your report and presented here in the slideshow, highlighted here, offers a summary of municipal contributions, Arts Centre budgets, and then factors in for each municipality's population to determine a cost per resident. Generally speaking, the range is around $3 to $30 per resident. Along with advanced Arts Centre concept refinement, the exploration of partnerships with other West Shore municipalities via the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society model could be something to be considered, as in instances where multiple municipalities are involved, the overall contribution per resident tends to be lower. Table 2 in the report before you offers some conceptual scenarios assuming a $500,000 annual municipal contribution. As you can see, the range is approximately $7 to $30 per resident. Sorry. So the recommendations as offered on this slide are before committee for your consideration of a recommendation to council. But before we dive into these, I'd like to ask Mr. Chair if we would be permitted to allow Ms. Collingson to make her presentation on the behalf of the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Centre Society.
Yes, let's proceed with that, Ian.
One moment as I stop sharing here.
Thank you, Mr. Boyhill, and thank you, Chair, and all the rest of Council. Mr. Chair, I'm just confirming that you can see my screen.
Absolutely, Judith. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. My name is Judith Collington. I'm president of the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Centre Society, also known as PAX, and a longtime resident and business owner in Colwood. Also online with me today are Howard Jang, Michael Heaney, and Hilary Meredith, the consultants who we hope will be helping to move this project forward. So following Council's earlier direction and the guidance in the OCP, PAX has been working with staff to explore the possibility of a West Shore Arts Centre located here in Colwood. And I just have to say, it's been a pleasure working with your staff. Thank you. I wanted to follow up on the staff report with just some additional information. So I want to talk about the importance of arts infrastructure as part of building a well-rounded community, provide a little more background on the proposed approach and consideration of operating funds, and talk about how we propose to advance the concept of a performing arts centre. Before I get there, just a reminder of what it is we're trying to achieve. This will be a facility used by folks from all over the West Shore, in fact, region-wide. The report refers to a performing arts facility, but it is so much more than just a theatre and a place to put on plays. This needs to be a facility that meets diverse needs, so theatre, dance, music, fine arts, and more. So we use the term Community Arts and Culture Centre. And arts and culture, of course, are not fringe interests. All of us access arts and culture. When COVID hit, we all turned to Netflix and Spotify to see us through. And think of the community excitement over the filming of the movie Made last year and incredible economic benefits to this region. But just as we don't get NFL stars unless we support our kids through the minor leagues, we don't create actors and dancers and singers and musicians and set designers unless we support them in their chosen careers. And even if you don't get to be a professional actor or an NFL player, those experiences, those friendships shape us and make life so much richer. So we are focused on a community facility, serving the needs of our resident. So think kids' music lessons, pottery classes for adults, activities that will engage and excite youth, a place that will bring people together. It will be important to be affordable to those community users. And we also want a very strong focus on being accessible to all users. So even if you have mobility or other challenges, this space will work well for you. And we know that this type of highly accessible facility is very much needed in this region. We want to be inclusive. Our community is diverse. It has diverse needs. We need to do this thoughtfully. The CRD Stage 1 report, which you have attached to your staff report, identified a number of gaps in what it called the performing arts ecosystem. So this map shows the many performance venues downtown, but nothing in the West Shore. Region-wide, there are very few theatre spaces in that 300 to 500 seat zone, so that kind of middle range, and even fewer performance spaces that are truly accessible to all. These are all gaps that the West Shore Community Arts and Culture Centre could fill, giving us regional reach and significance, as well as meeting the needs of West Shore residents. Langford, of course, is moving ahead with its proposal for a 1,200 seat theatre, excuse me, and these two facilities would complement each other beautifully. The new Dogwood Auditorium is perfect for Royal Road's needs, but it's not a theatre space. And the school theatres are a wonderful asset, but they have very limited availability for community use. So yes, there is a big gap in our community infrastructure that this centre could fill. Where are we at today? You will remember that we came to you in June 2020 with a proposal for a very significant development at the Park and Ride site that included an arts and culture centre. So that project we called Colwood Place, and you asked us to work with staff to develop a memorandum of understanding. That proposal was based on an aim to create a self-funding centre that did not rely on municipal support. And we heard support from the concept from some, but others had reservations about this approach and concerns about the viability of the financial model. So we have set this aside for now and want to explore other options with you. So just to be clear, this report and recommendations do not refer to the Colwood Place development, and we're not bringing forward a memorandum of understanding at this time. That will wait until we have clear direction for the Arts Centre project. So you'll also remember that we came to you last October and talked about some of the work that we've been doing to move this project forward. And throughout, we have been working with staff. And today what we want to do is bring you a revised approach that looks at what we could achieve if there is willingness to consider funds to support operations. So in the next slides, I want to look at the location, consideration of operating funds, and the updated study that will provide us with essential information. Location, location, location. The staff report notes that there are two Colwood centres, Seaside Village, City Centre. Our organisation, and this is based on extensive discussions with others in this business, recommends a city centre location. It's got excellent accessibility by vehicle, by bus, by bike. The gateway visioning process that's going on may well identify some interesting opportunities for collaboration. And of course, we hope to collaborate with West Shore Parks and Recreation and their programmes. And as many speakers have already said, this would be something that really promotes economic development and business growth in Colwood's downtown. So it's a real win-win for the arts community and for Colwood. The Gateway Visioning project identified the possibility of a civic precinct in Colwood City Centre area, and specific centres will likely arise, specific locations, pardon me, will likely arise from that. So could be the Park and Ride site, could be on West Shore Parks and Recreation land, could be in some other central location. So the Gateway Visioning process will help to identify the best location for this. The third recommendation that you have before you is to explore a West Shore Community Arts and Culture Centre through the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society model. So your support for this recommendation would mean that we would work with staff and West Shore Parks and Recreation to explore options for co-location, explore options for a West Shore Parks and Rec Society role in operations and programming, explore options for shared funding through the West Shore Parks model. And as the staff report notes, there may also be future options for shared funding model through a CRD regional or sub-regional performing arts facilities service, but not something you're going to be deciding on today. I just wanted to say on the funding side, the intent, of course, is to build a facility with a sound financial footing and that also accesses other non-tax streams. But the reality is that in every place with similar facilities, local governments do contribute to the operating costs. And so the fourth recommendation looks to understand Council's willingness to explore this principle. And the staff report, and Mr. Vorhill has talked about this, provides a sense of what other communities contribute on a per person basis. I want to stress, as others have done, that this would be an investment in community health and well-being. The West Shore has fabulous sports and recreation facilities supported by taxpayers. We deserve to have fabulous arts and culture facilities, that balance of healthy body, healthy mind. Just a couple of fun facts for you. Did you know that people who participate in the arts experience slower cognitive decline as we age? And as I age, this is becoming increasingly important to me. Thank you very much. That those who participate in cultural and social activities have lower levels of anxiety and depression, higher satisfaction with their quality of life. Arts and culture is good for our mental well-being. It's also good for our economy. As you may have noticed in the Stage 1 report, arts and culture contributed about 7.6 billion of economic activity in BC in 2018. Arts is an economic driver, and we are currently losing out. And of course, this is an investment in our children and families. I want to stress that a contribution to operating funds is a future investment. So, Mr. Chair, I know you're concerned about the budget, so not for this year's budget, not for next year's budget. It's going to be a few years, of course, before we're up and running. And an interesting thing to think about is, of course, by this time the population will have grown. And of course, per person costs go down as our population grows. So even if it was just Colwood contributing, our projected 2028 population would reduce the per person cost from about $30 a person, which was based on 2016 population, down to $22 a person. The second recommendation deals with a request for funding for an updated study to advance the concept. Many of you will remember the detailed and excellent report done by Rick Schick and his team, but it is time to modernize and refresh this information. A lot has changed since then, technologies, impact from COVID, changes to the groups who are around and looking for space. There are some new groups we need to get out and talk to. The CRD Stage 1 report provided high-level information. We are looking for more granular West Shore specific information for a community facility located in Colwood City Centre. So to understand what has changed or not, this study will provide updated information on who are the core users of the facility, so who are the regular clients who are going to be renting this space, what are their needs, what spaces do they need, how large, what technologies, what supporting spaces, who are the audiences that would attend and what do they want? And of course, this too has changed as Colwood and the West Shore have grown. What are the expected high-level capital and operating costs and revenues? So I really hope that you will agree to support the funding request for the study. In your draft service plan, there is an allocation of 2.3 million for parks, trails, and recreation, an excellent investment in a healthy and desirable community. But there is no line item for arts and culture, despite being identified as a 2022 strategic priority. The $30,000 that we're asking for to support a serious move towards Arts and Culture Centre for our community represents less than 0.02 of that 2.3 million. We feel it is a very reasonable ask for something that adds to the vibrancy and desirability of Colwood as a place to live and work. And Mr. Chair, I know that as a former director of the Victoria Conservatory of Music, you truly understand and value the arts and the need for funding support. We are very excited about the team who will be working with us to provide that updated report. And I won't read through all of their bios. I hope you take a chance to do that. As you can see from this slide, this team brings an exceptional depth and breadth of experience. And they're excited about working with us. They want to share their knowledge and ideas. This is a real opportunity, a chance to build a facility that truly meets current needs from the ground up. Howard keeps reminding us of the importance of focusing on the coexistence of artistic excellence and social impact. It's all about health of our communities, creating public spaces that enrich the community. And if you build them right, they're busy places from early morning to late at night. So these are the key messages that I would encourage you to consider in your deliberations. Arts infrastructure is a missing piece in our community. Recommendations on the operating funds and working with West Shore Parks and Rec would enable us to explore shared funding options with other municipalities. And funding the update study will bring valuable information so that we can confidently build the right project in the right place, at the right time, at the right price, with a great team to make it happen. These are the recommendations. We are, as they say, on our toes with excitement to hear what you have to say. And as I close, I would like to remind you that your decisions today they're not about supporting our society. They're about supporting our whole community. Very happy to answer any questions you may have, and also Howard and Michael and Hillary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith. I'll just open it up to council for any questions that you would have for staff and or Judith at this point in time. I'd like to sever each of these recommendations and discuss them separately, but just generic questions for Judith and staff at this point in time. Mayor Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things that I'd like to follow up with staff. One of the first was your comments, Chair, just about that if we were to look to moving forward 5.1 and 5.3, which I'm assuming you meant 5.3, not 5.2, that would have a material effect of basically moving us from 5.4% lift to close to 7. Looking on page 6 of tomorrow's agenda, it looks to me like the Colwood on-call was already in there, but I could be reading that wrong. So could Ms. Hempting comment on that, please? Or Mr. Earl? I see Mr. Earl's camera's on too.
Certainly, I'll jump in here with that. So to clarify, the fire paid on call is factored into the draft property tax increase of 5.48%. But items in this report before you tonight regarding the Performing Arts Center, so in particular recommendation section 4, a phase-in, those potential costs have not been factored in to a 2022 tax increase, but the fire paid on call.
Thank you. And just to clarify, in the motion this evening, point 4, talking about us possibly looking at principal, raising it from $7 to, I'm not sure what the number was, that will not have a material effect on this year's budget, correct?
Staff's interpretation, referring to item 4, a phase-in of future annual operating contributions, would not be for the 2022 budget, but should we receive direction, we would incorporate something into a future budget year.
Great, thank you. And can you also confirm, please, if $30,000 was allocated to this for this evening, it is a 0.2% lift, correct?
Thank you. Thank you through the chair. With respect to the $30,000, we would not be treating that as a recurring ongoing expenditure. So we would propose one-time funding. In other words, we would not be seeking a property tax increase to support that, but we would be returning with a proposed special initiative project budget to support that work.
Okay, thank you. As well, can you please tell me, West Shore Park and Rec, I believe West Shore Park and Rec's budget is for the city of Colwood is roughly $1.1 million?
Approximately, the requisition, yes.
And it's my understanding that they came in at a 4% lift this year, or roughly around that?
Approximately, yes.
Which would take us to about $45,000 of actual material dollars increase that we'd be spending at West Shore Park and Rec this year. Is that correct?
In comparison to the prior year's requisition amount.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Councilor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I have a number of thoughts, not the least of which is I feel like I'm getting coerced into somewhere I'm not all that comfortable being. You know, I have several friends call in and pump the tires of this project. And I have to say, it's a great idea. A performing arts center somewhere nearby of the descriptions we've heard, wonderful, all over it. Here's a number of my concerns, and I flagged some pages here, so I'll just sort of raise them, maybe not as efficiently in order as they should be, but just as sort of as I see them in the report. First, recommendation number 1, that we advance the concept of establishing a performing arts facility in Colwood. Great idea, be nice, but I guess a lot of my thoughts will come back to what kind of foundation are we setting for this project? I believe we're going to need more widespread support, financial, to construct and operate on a West Shore wide model. And so if we start by telling everybody it's going to be in Colwood, you want to throw some money in, instead of we as a set of communities are going to build something, where's the best place? I think we become more challenged to get equitable cost sharing from other municipalities. Again, the operating costs, I get that. I'm not overly fussed about the fact that if one is built, it's going to cost money to operate. Just as an aside, it would be useful, I think, if staff got in the habit of giving us per person and per typical resident costs, because obviously if it was $30 a person and there's an average of 3 people per household, that becomes $90 per resident on your tax bill. So we just have to be cognizant that we're comparing apples to apples all the time. But again, as I say, it's going to cost something, and it's hopefully it's going to be a facility everybody's happy to pay for. So that's the first thought. Again, we get to page 3 of the staff report. And the last line of the first paragraph, about creating arts resulting in Colwood specific considerations and recommendations. I mean, we have to decide, is this a sort of larger than Colwood facility, or are we just going to do it strictly on our own? And obviously the cost implications are significant if we make the latter decision. Again, this stage 1 report from CRD, quite interesting. If you want to turn to page 37, I was intrigued by the Mary Winsphere cost sharing. North Saanich pays $185,000. I think they're 12,000 people. Sydney, same size, pays $325,000. Central Saanich, it's 50% bigger than either of them, hasn't paid anything since 2017. So I think it indicates the range of support that is out there. And if we don't sort of establish that on day 1, we're really fighting an uphill battle. So again, it worries me. Here's some perhaps even more concerning stuff. Again, and now if I flip to page 48 of our package, and there's a little box there. Federal cultural spaces infrastructure funding is available to all these organizations. However, it appears as though major capital investment will require a concerted and cohesive regional approach to succeed, rather than individual asks from several different organizations. So, it sounds like Langford is going ahead with something, and presumably they would like some federal money, as everybody would. If we go ahead, we would like some federal money. So then we're at the risk of getting sort of confusion in Ottawa of what are we doing. And so I think, again, we can create the best facility in the world, but the finances have to be sort of worked out equitably and bulletproofly, if that's a word, ahead of time. Let's skip some of this. Okay, and again, this is page 56, basically saying the same thing. At least in part, this appears to result from other levels of government feeling hard-pressed to support a multitude of projects in the same area without meaningful coordination between the interested parties. So let's do that meaningful coordination so that we have a better chance. Again, as part of Ms. Cullington's report, recommendation on operating funds enables us to explore shared funding options with other municipalities. I think the shared funding has to be a starter. I mean, we have to understand that going in. I see there's no discussion here tonight of capital costs. Operating costs are $7 to $30 a person. Okay. But capital costs, I don't know what we're talking about, $30, $40 million. I mean, a significant amount. I don't know where that comes from. So, as I said, it's a great idea. It's going to cost some money, and I accept that. But I don't think, without the foundation of who's in and who's out as a starting point, I'm scared that we're sort of negotiating from a position of weakness. If we're going to go ahead and build it and then ask others to chip in to pay for it, that's not the right approach. And I think we've been through this before. West Shore Parks and Rec, my gut says that's a fabulous place to put it, and it's shared by a number of municipalities, but other municipalities may not agree or may not approve or whatever. So I think we have to be a little bit more concerned about the base, the foundation of this project, and not just be carried away by, we'd all like to see it happen. We'd love it, you know, somebody could plunk it down somewhere, we'd all be happier than clams. But to get from here to there, I think we have to be very hard, make some tough decisions. So sorry to go on so long there, Chair, but it's a big decision and I have grave concerns.
Thanks very much, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Jensen? You're muted. You're still muted. There you go.
It just unmuted, for goodness sakes. So thank you, and thank you to Councillor Parkinson for some of the sage commentary. I feel like I want to do something in this space for PAC Center, but it starts to scare me when a board member indicates it's a $50 million build, and we're talking about going it alone. And I know we don't have capital numbers before us here, and that's not the intent. But it does make my skin crawl a little bit that we're talking about being an island unto ourselves. And I understand that probably has some net benefit to it all, but bottom line is I too have some concerns. Now, for the $30,000, maybe Mr. Borhill can just tell us exactly what we're getting for this. Is this a regional report, or is this going to be Colwood centric again? And then we're going to have to take another look if we want to find some avenues of collaboration.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Jansen. And Mr. Chair, the $30,000 is proposed to be provided to the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Center for the purposes of advancing project planning. So I might, if I could be allowed to call upon Ms. Collington to speak to the proposed scope of work.
Okay, thanks so much, Ian. Ms. Collington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Jansen. So the study is very much specific to a facility that would be based in Colwood City Centre. So the idea is that, you know, whether it was on West Shore Parks and Rec land or some other lands, that, you know, what is it that would be appropriate to this area? So, you know, what kind of facilities are we going to include in this? How big, what kinds of spaces, who are the users going to be? We really need to make sure that we're building this for the people who are going to be using it. And we have good information from Rick Schick's report, but we know that that's dated at this point in time. And Rick's was also focused on doing this at Royal Bay, which we feel is not the best location for this. So we really do need to update that information. So as I said, the CRD Stage 1 report provides some of the kind of the region-wide thinking, but this really brings it home to a West Shore facility that would be domiciled in Colwood.
So I like that, and I think that for me, I could see support for a facility that's located, managed, operated under the umbrella of West Shore Parks, certainly in that area. And I like some of that stuff, but I struggle a little bit about we collaborate in so many other areas. For instance, fire service, we have all sorts of mutual aid, auto aid arrangements, and we look at it regionally. Police service, the same thing. We look at it regionally. Yes, we take some decisions and we hear reports as a community, but we're looking at a new police building that's being done regionally. And I think that part is missing for me in this regard too. I am keen to see that we update our facts and figures, but I just wonder how much value there is there if it's so centric on Colwood that it doesn't find any congruity with, say, Machosen, which is right next door, and where they fit into the puzzle. or do we have to wait for them to do a study as well? Those are some of my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Jensen. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Councillor Day.
Okay, thank you. I am with everybody else, I guess on this one. I'm a little concerned because I don't feel that we have a clear mandate from our population yet. And I say yet, just, you know, when you look at the CRD study that report that they did, they had something like 1,600 page views for their information, but they only had 19 people participate. And to me, that isn't enough. And I don't know yet who wants to be involved. I don't know if West Shore Parks and Rec wants to be involved. I don't, you know, it may not be an easy fit at West Shore Parks and Rec. It may not be, it may be a standalone project, which I would be okay with, given that, you know, people in Colwood love the arts and they're interested in the arts. I do know that, but I don't know enough to feel that I'm ready to invest. The other statistic that was brought forward is the 2018 Statistics Canada reporting on the income from arts, which is great. And it also noted that the majority of the economic impact from that art was derived from wages. And in the situation where Colwood is alone in building a center for the arts, then it's Colwood who's paying those wages. So I have been trying to promote the arts in Colwood since 2000. That's how long I have been working on it. And I have felt hopeful at times, only to be concerned that as partners decided they wanted to do something different. So my personal take is that I would like to consider ways to meet those needs, or many of them, with a space that is affordable and adaptable in a non-traditional way, so that we could make it less expensive and more barrier-free, like even a place with roofs over amphitheater seating could work to create a space for arts. So my recommendation would be that if we're going to, you know, we already spent $30,000 for the first report. If we're going to do another one, I think that the community needs to be consulted to find out that they, you know, really want us to do this. And I think maybe, you know, we're at a time where that is referendum material. I think that the public should be consulted. They certainly were consulted when West Shore Parks and Rec was created. So that is where I would find more comfort, because there's a lot of unknowns, and that's not anyone's fault. The members of the group have been doing an incredible job, and they have kept their energy moving in the right direction. But we need to know that our community is behind them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Day. Mayor Martin, you have another question, please?
No, I don't have any questions, Chair, but I seem to have been the only one who asked questions. So when's the opportunity to actually make comments? Because I'm prepared to make comments, but I had held my comments because I thought we were in question. So when are we actually, so if you're welcome to come back to me. I do have comments, but I was saying to what you had asked for just on questions.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I will leave that to you.
Okay, so I guess I'll just wrap this up for myself. I was the only one that hasn't asked had comments or questions here. I guess my first question right now is to staff is how much have we spent on this already? Like we've done a number of these studies and how much have we actually spent? Is there an easy record that we can look at? Approximately, rough order of magnitude. We spent like 50,000, 80,000, 100,000. Jen?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. We spent approximately $65,000 on the study that's being referenced. That was the spend between about 2012 and 2015 on that study.
So that's the cash, but you know, as far as in terms of resources, how much time and effort have we put into this ourselves?
Correct. That comment is just on the cash, just for the consultant that was engaged. I would have to turn to staff, perhaps Ian Borhill, to comment on additional time that's being spent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff could certainly provide an estimate to committee or council at a future date. At this time, there aren't significant staff resources going into the project beyond the creation of the documents that are being presented here and the liaising with PACS. However, we have limited resources, so it is an important consideration for the city in considering the support of this service area. And we could certainly make an estimate as to what to date we've put into this service area in terms of planning support at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just out of interest, it's not pertinent to the motions that are on the table tonight, but I guess my only other question or comment is that what I'm having so much difficulties because I'm such a big fan of this right now. I'd like to see this happen, but I guess the reality hit me really hard here because, you know, we don't have, I'm trying to make decisions based on no financials. I'm sitting here and I'm blind. I feel totally blind. How do I know the estimate between $7 and $30 for operating costs is right when we don't have, you know, a business plan, like a proper business plan that was supposed to have been done? I know they changed direction and we're doing something else, but we could be doing something else after we've allotted this $30,000. We could find out we're doing this by ourselves. That's a different equation altogether. And you know, you're not looking at a 300 to 400 person auditorium if it's just a COVID initiative. We couldn't, with a population of around 20,000 people, we couldn't do this on ourselves. Just, you could do a quick analysis and you'll see that we could not do this in terms of, you know, capital and operating costs. So that's what it does. This is just a business. I'm just taking a complete business look at this right now. It just doesn't make sense. And I guess the other item that we still have outstanding, and maybe Mayor Martin, you might have an answer to this because you work with this with the CRD right now. But we had a resolution with the Economic Prosperity Committee where we had asked the mayor to actually canvass the West Shore mayors to see if there was any interest in this, and that would give us a better feel because at that time we know it's a non-starter with this, or if it's a starter, or are we doing this alone? Because that kind of decision will affect the business model and the business case that you put together for this. And so I guess my feeling was that, are we going down another road here only to have it change because some other future events, no one wants to participate in this, so therefore we have to change it again? We have to have another study done. So I don't know if you have an answer to that right now, Mayor Martin, if you've talked to other, okay, so you haven't, okay, that's not a problem. So that's just how I feel right now. And I echo, the other fellow councilors' concerns. I am concerned because, I look at this and I'm looking at this putting us at a lot of financial risk right now. I'm not talking the $30,000 we have to put down, but just going off on this venture, and it scares it scares the bejesus out of me, to tell you the truth, because I've never seen, aside from some initial financials that were submitted to us, and that was based on another different set of assumptions, and I frankly am feeling not very comfortable right now. Judith Collington, you have a response to that? Sorry, go ahead, Judith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just did want to touch on a couple of councillors' concerns. There was a question around how much staff time had gone into this. And I want to emphasize that our society has put in a huge amount of volunteers' time in order to not spend Colwood staff time. So we've been very conscious of that. And I have to say that given our rate of pay is zero, Colwood has got a fantastic deal out of the time that we've put into it. I did also want to say, Mr. Chair, you raised concerns that you don't feel like you have the information and the comfort. And I'm certainly hearing this, we don't want to do this as a Colwood going alone. We want to do this as an explored piece. That is very much the thinking behind why one of the recommendations says, why don't you send staff and our society out to talk to West Shore Parks and Recreation to really understand what that kind of collaboration could look like. That's why that's there. The notional operation funds is very much in principle at the moment. We're certainly not asking council to make any kind of direction on should it be $7, should it be $30. You need that information before you can make that decision. So, obviously this would be a step along the way. The $30,000 would provide information on the capital costs, updated operating and funds and revenues. And again, that would provide you with the information that I believe you're looking for. So I'm trying to encourage you not to think of this as a high risk investment with a kind of a scary financial commitment. It is a commitment of $30,000 plus some staff time and volunteer time from our organization to move forward and have those conversations with West Shore Parks and Recreation to explore some of those opportunities and to really understand what that financial model needs to look like, so that you can, as a council, along quite possibly with other councils, to make that decision, but being well informed. But it has to start somewhere. We can't go to the other municipalities until we first talk to Colwood, and Colwood has said clearly, yes, we're interested in pursuing this idea.
You think the second step?
We have to start somewhere.
Yeah. So do you think that the starting place is obviously coming to us, and we know that right now, but do you not think the other very, very important part of this is to find out if our neighboring municipalities have any interest in this? That's the first question that should be asked. There's no sense going off to West Shore Parks and Rec at this point in time, to me, unless we got some agreement in principle with other municipalities. Wouldn't that be a better approach? I don't know. I'm asking the questions here.
I think Mr. Earl might want to respond to that one. Or the mayor.
Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. Certainly, the third part of the recommendation is that we explore this facility through the West Shore Parks and Rec model. And the last word on that sentence is important. That model is one where capital and operating costs are shared amongst a group of municipalities. And so again, the third recommendation here is to direct the society to look at a shared model of operating and capital costs. In order to do that, the society is asking you for $30,000 to get precise about what that could look like at Colwood Corners. And the last part of the motion is really important for council to understand that if we went down this road and it was a shared model, other municipalities who occupy this field end up contributing tax dollars. And so we didn't want you to continue walking down this road with the belief that you might not, at the end of the road, be contributing tax dollars. But very much so, we are looking for direction to find regional partners for both capital and operating. We're specifically looking at a performing arts facility in Colwood's Center as the starting point for the conversation, notwithstanding that we may be convinced by those regional partners that there's a better place for it. But the starting point, I think, for us here at this time is Colwood Center. Does that answer your question?
Okay. I did pick up one thing you stated right now, and it just sent some alarm bells to my head. Okay, so we're talking operating, and then you brought up the subject of capital now. So are we in that business of raising capital for this, or is this the society that does this? Just asking the question.
May I respond, Chair Kobayashi?
Please, yes, please. Yes, please, Robert.
The idea of the third part of the motion is to explore both. And I know I wasn't around for the majority of the construction of West Shore Parks and Rec facilities, but my instinct is that there were different models of capital contribution that led to each different facility. And there was likely federal and provincial grants, there was likely local fundraising, there was likely local tax contributions, and there's probably a mix. And so at the end of the day, the model, the regional model is we're asking for support to consider the regional model for both the operating costs at the end of the day, if the facility is built, and the capital costs to get there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Just a quick question. I don't know if it's for the mayor or for Mr. Earl, but what's the best approach? Is the best approach for the Arts Society to go to whether it's West Shore Parks and Rec or the other municipalities, or should it be sort of a higher level mayor? Should the mayor open the door for them, so to speak, even though they may have to, bat cleanup? At least shouldn't it? If I guess, yeah, should it be a Colwood a politician-led thing or an art society-led thing? And I just like your thoughts, either one of you or both of you.
Good question.
I mean, Chair, I'll answer first. I mean, as you're all aware, we're in a weak mayor system. And so I certainly can speak to the rest of the mayors, but the mayors don't necessarily represent their councils. And so that would mean that the next step would be bringing it to the councils for discussion. And, and it would go from there. Part of the issue would be gathering enough information to be able to present something that's attractive enough to the other municipalities so that would create an interest. And I think this $30,000 that we're talking about investing gets us there, because it fine-tunes the information to be shared with the other municipalities. Right now, I'm sharing a 10-year-old report with them. So it's that's where I sit from that. But I'll look to Mr. Earl to comment from a staff standpoint.
Mr. Earl?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. The West Shore Parks and Rec model is very successful. And at that table, regional representation sits and make decisions and recommendations that flow back to their councils on both capital and operating costs of delivery of recreational services primarily, although there are some cultural services delivered by that group. It's my belief that we should leverage that capacity and to try to build support within the nucleus of that group, who would then reach back out to their communities to build support from there. And the specific recommendation number 3 is looking for the society to begin that conversation with the West Shore Parks and Rec Society.
I think I know the chair. Councillor Day, please.
Thank you. I think that question is important, whether it's a political thing or an arts focused thing to approach West Shore Parks and Rec, because I don't think that any of us would probably be able to do the same justice that the PAX group would do to the material in speaking to West Shore Parks and Rec. But they also need to be empowered to approach West Shore Parks and Rec by us. So if that is the direction that council would like this to go, I think that needs to be made clear, that we are suggesting to PAX that they talk to West Shore Parks and Rec and see what the level of interest in participating in an arts center would be from there. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Day. Okay, seeing no more hands, I'm going to sever each of these items here. The first recommendation, I don't know if this is necessary, but that council advanced the concept of establishing a performing arts facility in Colwood. I thought we already did, but maybe I'm mistaken. Mayor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I wanted to comment just on general. I haven't had an opportunity to actually say what I thought. I just asked questions.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I forgot to come back.
All right. So I am supportive of the recommendations that are before us this evening. I very much appreciate the volunteer organization that has invested a significant amount of time to try and move this forward. It's a really hard thing to get to a yes. And I've seen that over and over when we talk about the skateboard park, for example. It's really, really hard to get things moving. I think they've done a great job. You know, they brought on Royal Roads University. Royal Roads University is a significant player within the city of Colwood as a cultural player. The fact that West Shore Chamber of Commerce has stepped up and has commented that they're supportive of this moving forward demonstrates to me at least that there's in principle some economics behind the decisions that are being made. And I very much appreciate that we're looking at building coalitions to move this forward and that this isn't just being separated as an individual project. I've also heard council sort of talk about that they don't know if this is right or not. And how does council know if this is right or not? Well, I think we know if this is right or not by getting more information. And I don't think we're locking ourselves in to, you know, a $7 to $30 per person. That's just by principle. We're seeing if we want to continue to move this forward or not. We've been told that the $30,000 is going to be coming out of reserve, so it has not a taxation effect or consequence. And if we vote this down this evening, I guess my challenge to council is, or committee, excuse me, would be how do we expect to get the answers then? And how do we expect to move the questions that you're asking forward? And how do we expect to get those answers if we're not seeking them out? If we say no tonight, it basically just says no to arts, is in my opinion. And I think that would be a shame. So I'm going to be supporting all these motions for those reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So would anyone like to move the first part of this motion? Can I see a hand, please? Okay, Mayor Martin. Discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Can I have a show of hands to anyone against the first motion, which is that council advance the concept of establishing a performing arts facility in Colwood? Seeing none, that motion passes. Okay, the second part of the recommendation, that $30,000 be allocated in the upcoming draft budget to the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Center Society, JDF PAX, to advance the concept of performing arts facility. May I have a mover, please? Mayor Martin. Discussion. Councillor Parkinson, and then Mayor Martin.
Just not sure how frequent this is where the city gives money to another group to spend on something like this, and what kind of terms and conditions are, what happens, for instance, if they get 3/4 of the way through this and find out that everybody's chomping at the bit to join on and we need to build a bigger one or something, like what controls do we have over the 30,000 if it goes over budget or how it's spent? Are we comfortable that we're not on the hook for differing amounts or for something different? That's my only concern.
Thank you. Would staff like to attempt to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Yes, upon council's decision to proceed with the budget line item, staff would be developing an agreement with PACS that would allow for the contributions to be provided under a specific set of expectations, whether it be for reporting on outcomes or how it's spent. These types of agreements are generally developed in cases like this.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mayor Martin, Councillor Day, you're on deck.
Thank you. I won't take much time with committee. I just wanted to reinforce this year we're spending somewhere between $40,000 and $45,000 just in lift at West Shore Park and Rec, which is more than what this entire amount would be for the arts. And I very much believe that it's not a significant investment, but an important investment in our community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day?
Thank you. I think my question was answered by Mr. Borhill earlier, just in that because we don't have a memorandum of understanding with PACS, so I feel better that there would be some terms and conditions. And I just wanted to comment for PACS that I think they certainly deserve the $30,000. They've been working very hard for a long time to keep the wheels moving under that bus. And they have done so. And I think in fairness to the great efforts that PACS have made, that we should have new information. But I also would ask, Mr. Chair, that you come back to me after the motion because I have a motion that I would like to make. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Day. So I'm really toying with this one in my own head. I just feel that before I would agree to this is I would clearly like to understand what the terms of reference here are. What we're going to get as deliverables right now. Obviously, we've spent a lot of money so far, and I'm still scratching my head, and we don't seem to be any further ahead here. So like I said, I'm sitting on the fence on this. I'm being a bit of a fiscal hawk right now, and I'll at this point in time call the question. Those that are opposed to the motion, please stick up your hand. Someone has to, so I will. Okay, so I'm the only one against it, Councillor Kobayashi, and everybody else for it. The motion carries. Okay, the third.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, before you get
to yeah, sorry, it's over to you, Councillor Day. Sorry, yes.
Thank you. I would like to propose the motion that a referendum question on an arts facility in Colwood be included on the election ballot in 2022.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Any discussion? Councillor Parkinson, Mayor Martin, you're on deck. Councillor Parkinson?
I think we should ask before we go down this road whether anybody thinks it's feasible to have a realistic referendum question. I mean, today, what's now February, so that's 6 months. We're supposed to have some concept of how much capital we're looking for, what operating might be. Referendum may well come down the path at us unless somebody comes up with a nice big fat check to build the whole thing. But I doubt that by October there will be sufficient information for a realistic referendum. But I'd love to hear different from either the proponents or staff somewhere.
May I just add
Councillor
something?
Day, please. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Just the referendum doesn't have to have a specific dollar amount. It can be a yes or no. You support an arts facility in Colwood, or you're not interested. It's to gauge to take the public's temperature to see if this is what they would like.
To be honest, my concerns remain, but again, I'll listen to others on them. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Martin.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just will mirror Councillor Parkinson's comments. I think it's we should go to referendum when we have the information. I think it's far too premature to be going to residents, because the first thing residents will be asking, if they're supportive or not supportive, is how much is this going to cost me? And if we don't have those answers, I don't think that's a fair referendum question. And so I won't be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Day, I love your idea, but I'm of the same opinion. It's like if someone asked me if I wanted a Lamborghini, of course I'm going to say yes, but they're going to tell me it cost me $500,000. I'm going to say no. So I think that we have to put context around that. So I love the idea, but without the details. So anyways, at this point in time, I'll call the question. Those opposed to the motion. So it looks like Mayor Martin, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Park. So unfortunately, you get defeated, Councillor Day. So the motion's not.
No problem.
Carried.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So I'm going to go to item number 3. I'm going to lower all the hands first. And that council support the Juana Fuca Performing Arts Center Society in the exploration of a West Shore performing arts facility through the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society model. I guess they're doing it by default. If we've authorized the $30,000, I guess it's a moot point. But I'll just move that motion just to move things along here. And is there Councillor Day?
Thank you. I will say that the West Shore Parks and Rec model is different than through the West Shore Parks and Rec. So you could set up an art society of the same structure as West Shore Parks and Rec if West Shore Parks and Rec was not interested. So
Right.
I think it is
Right. I think it's more the model they're looking at, how we do business, through the West Shore Parks and Rec. I think that's the intent, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? I've made the motion. Just trying to move things along, and I'm just going to lower your hand, Cynthia, and then I'm going to call the question. All those against this motion, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous, and so we move on. So that motion has passed. And lastly, and further, that in principle, council considered the phase-in of a future annual operating contribution towards an arts and culture facility in Colwood in the order of $7 to $30 per person. Motion, Councillor Jensen, are you making the motion then? Well, I can't hear you, sir. You muted.
Yeah, go ahead, but
okay.
Have an item for discussion.
Okay, I'll let you. Okay, I'll open it up for discussion, and I'll let you go first. Councillor Day, you're on deck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to know if this kicks in before construction of the building, or what's the intent here? Because I'm not in support of it if it's going to start kicking in 10 years before this facility gets built.
Good comment. Staff, I think I heard an earlier answer to that, but staff, would you like to answer? Mr. Earl?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. The intention of this motion is, should a facility be built, that in principle, council supports the notion of an operating contribution from the city of Colwood, should a facility be built.
Okay, gotcha. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this motion at this time. I do support the arts. There's more than one arts organization in Colwood though. And so I think it's important to be careful that the cart doesn't get in front of the horse. I really, I think that the request for money in the budget has to come after we have an idea of what's being done with the money.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. And staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that this motion is more to demonstrate from a council standpoint that they understand that there's a long-term consequence, that if a facility was to move forward, that there would be a tax implication on that. Staff did not want to be moving this forward with the council under the understanding that there would be zero tax implications as the facility moved forward. Hence the reason why they're saying, in principle, you understand that this could cost somewhere between $7 and $30. And if we as a council or as a committee recommending to council that we're not supportive of that, then we should tell staff now. We shouldn't tell staff later. But if this is about principle, this is not about spending dollars today. At least that's how I interpret it. And staff, if I'm incorrect in my statements, please correct me.
Ian, I see your picture come on. Do you want to confirm that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, His Worship's interpretation of staff's recommendation is absolutely correct.
Okay, so my only issue with it, seeing no other hands, I'm just going to make one comment here. Why do we have to put a dollar value in here when we really don't know what that dollar value is going to be at this point in time? Because we're just in principle agreeing that it is an annual operating contribution, and if you're going to lock yourself up, and some nut like me in the future is going to hold your feet to the fire on that number. It's just a comment. I think it should be amended, and we shouldn't necessarily put a dollar value in there. That's just my opinion, because we don't know. We're agreeing to a principle here, and by putting a hardcore number in here, it's worrisome to me that it may be, you may be way out to lunch on it too. So I don't know. It might be $35. I don't know. Any comment from staff on that? Jen?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. If you refer to table 1 of the report, I mean, to comment on your comment, this is absolutely an estimate. And certainly as we get further into this process, the ongoing maintenance and future replacement costs associated with such a facility could absolutely be different from the $7 to the $30 that's mentioned. That being said, the $7 to $30 range is a reasonable one based on some of the research that we've done for similar facilities around the region. So I offer that up for consideration. But yes, it's absolutely an estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Jensen? You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was going to say, if this makes it easier, I mean, let's amend the motion. I would like to suggest an amendment that we reflect council support or council recognition that operation of such a facility may require public funds in the future, and not bind ourselves to any monetary amount. I'm not sure if that helps or not.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, Councillor Jansen, but I was going to make the same sort of suggestion, but just wordsmithing it, reading through the motion, may I just suggest that we just end at the word Colwood and just put a period, so that the word that it says in the order of $7 to $30 per person just be removed. And so that we just say, in principle, we understand that there would be need to be for an operating, and if staff, I'm hoping staff could possibly comment and say if that's enough for them or if they need something more. And I apologize to Councillor Jansen, if your motion is better, I'm willing to take your motion.
As the mover, I accept the mayor's amendment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Earl, would you like to comment on that then?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. Ending the sentence at Colwood is enough information for staff.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So I'll call the question on the amended motion. See, no more questions. So all those against the amended motion. Okay, so there's no one against, so it's adopted unanimously. And on the original motion, I'll call the question. All those against, please raise your hand. And again, seeing none, so it is adopted unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I knew this was going to take a little while to get through this. Okay, item 5.2, Jill, or I guess it's Ian. I'm going to call on you to introduce the community amenity contribution policy, the interim update consideration. Ian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, this was prepared by our senior planner, but unfortunately she's unavailable to present tonight. So the report before you in this item, I have to share my screen. One moment, please. The report before committee is seeking direction on an interim community amenity contributions policy that would increase contribution rates to a community amenity fund and affordable housing reserve fund. The city's current community amenity contributions policy, which is included in Appendix 2 to the staff report tonight, was adopted and kept by council in 2009. Last year, direction was received by staff to review the amenity policy, and as such, an interim community amenity contributions policy is offered for consideration ahead of a comprehensive update to the city's community amenity policy anticipated for the second half of this year. The interim policy is limited to a rate of contribution that is in line with our regional peers. So essentially, there are two approaches to determining community amenity community amenity contributions: prescribed, fixed rate, or negotiated. The prescribed fixed rate approach sets contribution amounts, where a negotiated approach would provide for a range of identified amenities for consideration or involve a land lift analysis to determine the appropriate contribution. COA currently applies both approaches, as there is a base contribution valuation to the Community Amenity Fund and Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, but also flexibility in the wording of the policy to adjust fund contributions based on the nature of specific rezoning applications. The existing rate for contribution to the Community Amenity Fund for each additional dwelling unit permitted by rezoning is $2,500 for detached, duplex, and townhouse dwelling units, and $1,500 per additional apartment unit. There is also a contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund specified for each additional dwelling unit permitted by rezoning at the rate of $500 per additional detached, duplex, and townhouse dwelling unit. As the intention of the interim community amenity policy is to align COA with its regional peers, Table 1 offers a summary of community amenity contribution approaches, both fixed, negotiated, or both, and rates for those who have fixed rates as opposed to floating rates or negotiated rates. Comparison of negotiation-based community amenity contributions across municipalities is difficult, as it is site-specific and applicable to specific applications. Resultingly, for most like comparisons, the municipalities of Central Saanich, Langford, North Saanich, Oak Bay, Saanich, and View Royal were considered by staff, as their policies include fixed rate for residential development. These are highlighted in green on the table before you. Some municipalities offered a different rate for duplex or townhouse versus other types of multifamily unit. This valuation has been equated to the average as noted with the asterisks shown in the table, bottom of the table there. Note that a comparison of affordable housing-based contributions is not included, as each municipality determines how best to use land, planning, and finance tools to implement affordable housing. These approaches are often enacted via policies aside from amenity contribution policies. Table 2, presented on the slide before you, shows the average comparable rate, COLID's current rate, and highlights the differences in red. In comparison, COLID's amenity contributions are approximately 200% lower. To bring rates up to those that are similar to our regional peers, Council could set a range of increases as highlighted in Table 3. To have rates reflective of regional peers, it would be advisable to look for approximately 200% increase, resulting in a $7,500 contribution per single family dwelling, $4,500 per apartment to the amenity fund, and a $1,500 contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. With that, staff are making the following recommendations: that Council support an interim community amenity contribution policy. Secondly, and that the interim community amenity contribution policy consider contribution to the Community Amenity Reserve Fund for each additional dwelling unit permitted by rezoning at the rate of $7,500 per additional detached duplex and townhouse dwelling unit, and $4,500 for each apartment unit permitted by a new rezoning. Thirdly, that the interim community amenity contribution policy will consider contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund at the rate of $1,500 per additional detached duplex and townhouse dwelling unit permitted by new zoning. And lastly, that further Council direct administration to apply the interim community amenity contribution rates to any application that has not yet received first reading. And to clarify, based on the question we received at the beginning of the meeting, this would only apply to new rezonings for which the bylaw has not received first reading. That concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Borrell. Can you take that off the screen? Thank you very much. Councillor Baxter, questions? You're muted, Michael.
Yeah, I have a question, and then I want to move the motion. So my first question is that the idea of this motion or recommendation is that staff would go away and prepare the actual document. There's not an intention to approve a final approval of this until we see the document. Is that right?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Baxter, and through the chair. So the intention is that the committee would recommend to council the rates that are specified in the recommendation as an interim step before a comprehensive review was undertaken later this year. If we receive confirmation of the rates specified in this recommendation, we would, our intention is to apply them immediately pending council's decision.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to move the recommendation, but with the word consider wherever it occurs removed and replaced with provide for a. So remove consider and replace with provide for a, because I don't think a policy can actually consider anything. That's what we do.
I see what you mean. Okay. Staff, did you understand that? Amanda? Or
Yes, thank you.
okay. Ian, do you have a comment on that? Sorry.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Borhill. there are a lot of developments that have already received approval in Colwood. And I'm just wondering if you could approximate for me how many people this is likely to affect, because what I'm concerned about is a big swing change, which certainly I think, based on the review of the landscape municipally, shows that we're quite far behind. But if this results in only, the people who are maybe squeezing one more lot in, paying twice as much as what everybody else is paying.
Mr. Barhill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I understand the question correctly, this policy change as proposed would apply to all new rezonings. Historical rezonings that have bylaws that amended the land use bylaw would have the specified rates within those bylaws maintained. So yes, it would apply to smaller developments for developments that are benefiting from a rezoning decision that increases density.
Right. So it basically means Royal Bay would be off the table. Olympic View was not affected by this, and Royal Beach probably not affected by this either.
Through the chair, only until such time as those developments came to council for an additional increase in density, this would not apply to their current rates specified in the land use bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm intrigued. I'm on page 80, the first paragraph after the bullets at the top. Via Colwood CAC policy and application negotiations, the property owner and the city agree upon additional amenities provided part of the development. Blah, blah, blah. These contributions are voluntary on part of the applicant and may take the form of. So I don't understand. Are these voluntary or are these required?
Thank you, and through the chair to Councillor Parkinson. They are voluntary in terms of the applicant not necessarily having to proceed with the application and the proposal to council, which has at its discretion any number of rationale to deny an application. So essentially how it works is that councils in our province are given broad discretion as to what reasons they can bring to bear to either approve or deny an application, and consideration of the amenity package that's being brought forward is one of those things. So applicants can choose not to make the application and proceed with a proposal that is in line with the policy. It is voluntary in that sense, and then council has the ability to consider that in their deliberations of the application.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, if I was doing a development and felt that I was such a crackerjack one that I shouldn't qualify, I could ask not to make these, and council could consider that. Am I on the right page there? So similarly, people that are in the process, I think if we said people who have had at least one reading couldn't be dinged, I guess, with these new rates, but they could volunteer to pay them if they wanted to, and council might consider that. Might be useful information on those things as they work their way through the process to see if they've been asked if they'd like to volunteer to pay the new rates or not, if they don't have to. Anyway, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I just have two questions for Ian. So by raising these rates, we've just added to the affordability housing issue, right? I mean, these costs are just going to be passed on to the consumer, the buyer. Is that correct? Am I correct in assuming that?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Kobayashi. Staff have not undertaken analysis to determine how much of this increase should be expected to be passed on to the end consumer of housing. So I cannot provide an answer to that question. It is a good one, and certainly one that we would look at in the more comprehensive review.
Okay, and so the second question I have is, do we have a policy for the policies so that we're not looking at these every 10 years? Because we've got such a jump now, because the last time this was updated was in 2009, and now hence bang. Do we have something that what we do an automatic policy review, like things like this where there's dollars involved? I would have tended to thought that we would have sort of look at these annually or every 2 years or every 3 years. So my question is this one that just slipped through the cracks, or we don't have that automatic mechanism to review policies?
Thank you once again for that question, Councillor Kobayashi. This policy is one that's been used over the years here in Colwood to great effect in terms of achieving what we call density bonusing provisions in specific rezoning applications. And council can see through history, we've had contributions that have exceeded the policy amounts because of that flexibility in terms of developers choosing to negotiate other types of amenities or higher amounts to reflect the specific characteristics of the rezoning proposal. There is a precedent in the bylaw that specifies the application amounts for land use applications. There is a policy in that document that specifies a review every 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Baxter?
I just wanted to reference the issue of affordability. The increase we're talking about here is probably about 1% of the cost of a single family dwelling today. And any builder or developer who adds a percentage to the cost of what he's selling is going to, perhaps, although this is only 1%, it might reduce his market very slightly by increasing the cost. Or the developer has a different choice. You can cut costs somewhere else in the building, perhaps reduce the extent of the granite countertop, or reduce the size of the house slightly. Affordability these days for people buying is what they can get approved in the way of a mortgage. And if they can't get approved for the mortgage, they can't buy the thing. So the developers, manipulate what they're actually selling to make sure they can still sell to that person, even though they have to add 6,500. That's why we have all these small lots, is because they're having to cut down the product to make sure they can sell for what the buyers can actually raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other hands, I will call the question. All those against the motion made by Councillor Baxter? Just Councillor Jen? Oh, no, his hand went up and down. Okay. And it is accepted unanimously. So your hand's going up and down here. Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to catch the tail end of the discussion.
Oh, sorry about that.
I missed it.
Okay. So I'm gonna move on to 5.3. That's paid on call firefighter program. I believe Fire Chief Brian Irwin is here to do the presentation. Brian.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen briefly here, as I've got a quick presentation to support a high-level overview of the report before we get into discussions. So. All right. All right. So in November of 2021, the fire department participated in a service review where the introduction to tonight's recommendation was presented. Tonight, we're here to discuss the fire department's recommendation of the paid on call firefighter program and what it means to our community. Hopefully this is working. I apologize for this. There we go. The call of volunteer firefighters approached the fire chief's office back in 2019 regarding a compensation package to address the current demands on volunteer firefighters for their service to our community. As a result, the fire department has conducted a review of various compensation and operational response models that commonly exist in the industry. The four options that have been reviewed and presented in the report will follow. Option 1 is to move to a full career fire department model, providing fully staffed single engine response with 4 firefighters providing 24-hour-a-day coverage. Option 2 would be moving to a 24-hour night shift stipend model with a single fire engine with a 4 firefighter response model, along with a blended compensation package. This package would be phased in over 3 years. Year 1 with a flat nightly stipend rate for firefighters on night shifts at the station. Year 2 would implement a pay per call for large-scale and multi-apparatus incidents where additional members are required. And then year 3 would see an implementation of training and professional development initiatives to compensate firefighters for their commitment towards education. Option 3 would move strictly to a pay-per-call model with weekly training compensation and implementation of training and professional development initiatives similar to the later phase of option 2. This as well would be phased in over multiple years. Option 4, which is no change to the existing composite volunteer model as it stands today. Moving forward, the fire department, in consultation with the volunteer committee, would like to present option 2 as the recommended practice moving forward. This is a cost-effective approach to ensure service delivery for a 24-hour response model, as well as compensate volunteer firefighters for their service to our community. I'd like to present this recommendation as written in the report to the committee to discuss. Just stop sharing this here. All right, there we go.
Okay, thanks very much, Brian. Councillor Day, you're on.
Thank you. Chief, my question for you is really about a historical problem that I've noticed over my years with Colwood, which is that as we have been traditionally a volunteer-based service, many of our trained volunteers have been poached by other professional firefighting services. So I'm just curious how the recommended model that you're putting forward will be impacted by that same pressure.
I think, I don't think there's much we can do about that. Those are individuals that are seeking career ambitions. And as they're trained, firefighters, professionally trained, they're going to try and get careers elsewhere unless they can get them here. This model will allow us to provide a high level of community service 24 hours a day. And as far as retention goes of those members seeking career, I'm not sure if we can compete with outside agencies that is going to offer them employment.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I think the composite model has enormous, the composite model that we currently operate has enormous advantages for the community. The volunteers have been part of the spirit of the community for a long time, since before incorporation. And at the same time, we have some professional firefighters to make sure there's some response during the day. And I think the composite model is going to have to evolve. And I think what's been put in front of us, the actual recommendation, is a good way for it to evolve and survive for some time to come. Thank you. So I'd like to move the recommendation.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this, Chief. Probably a simplistic question. I'll give you a softball one, because you're new. Can you give me the breakdown between emergency and non-emergency calls? Like what creates the difference?
The difference for emergency, non-emergency call is obviously if there's some kind of life safety or significant incident where emergency response is required, we're going to respond emergency. Non-emergency calls are burning complaints, potentially beach fires, public assist calls, those kind of things. So they are a small percentage of what we do, but it is something that we do respond to.
Okay. And another question. So as I understand it, the idea is to have 4 call them volunteer firefighters staying in the hall overnight who are ready to hop in a truck and do what needs to be done. And during the day you have the same, only they're the paid full-time people. Give me a sense on sort of the level of qualifications and the level of service one might get having an incident at midnight versus at noon.
All of our volunteer officers and firefighters are trained to the same standards as required within the province. So they meet all the same professional standards that you would have in any organization of this type.
Great. And I have to say, from my personal opinion, training up guys to go on for a career in the fire service is a good thing, something to be proud of for yourselves and the whole department. So good on you. Yeah, I'll support this motion for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You notice my hand stayed up the whole time this time. So I am in favor of some change here, but I did have a couple of questions. The night shift coverage. Can you break down for us what night shift call load looks like for the department and what kind of, like, I guess the for instance would be, are we paying for them to go to these non-emergency calls overnight?
Well, yes, to answer that question directly is they would be fulfilling the non-emergency calls as well as the emergency calls. This is something that traditionally we would have done previously through a staff or a duty officer qualified individual that would be going out and doing this. So the crews at night would be still fulfilling that duty for non-emergency calls. As far as the breakdown goes, looking at the past couple of years here, we're roughly a 60 to 40, 65 to 35% breakdown of day to night calls. So if we look at last year, for an example, we had 865 calls for service in total. 320 were evening calls between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So 37%. And like any emergency services, it's not something we can schedule. You know, we have nights where, yeah, there's going to be quiet nights for the individuals in the station, but then they're going to have busy nights. I can look back to this past Saturday night. We had, 5 calls for service, and it was, they went to a couple medical calls, a car accident, vehicle fire, structure fire. So we do have busy nights, and then we have some that aren't quite as busy. So of those calls, I think, that is a substantial number, and it's going to continue to grow as we move forward.
So I see this like insurance. It's like, you don't need it until you actually need it, but or you don't think you need it until you need it. But I like that, and I agree with all of this. Thank you. And does this change the duty officer deployments at all if you got the full crew going out in the middle of the night, or is that hit and miss?
Well, there is a duty officer component at a higher level for more significant incidents is what we're currently working out, and that's part of how we're going to move forward as an organization. We still have a few things to pin down.
And I take it each night shift is staffed with a lieutenant or a captain.
Absolutely, yeah. We will try and staff our night shifts with the appropriate individuals that are trained to the fire officer levels.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Could Finance first answer just a question for me? Can you please, I'm just struggling with it, and I'm sure it's in the report, but can you tell me what are the financial consequences of option 2 compared to option 3?
we're looking, and I think part of that is I can answer that, Jen, if you want. Part of that is we're looking at service delivery as well as just the financial contributions. It is a bit, at the end of year 3, we presented 397,000 as a total bill. And then the end of year 3 for the for option 3 was 352,000, but that's without any improvements to service delivery.
And first of all, let me step back. Sorry, Chair. Congratulations, Chief. It's great to have you here, and it's great to have you in our first meeting. So, sorry, am I seeing improvement with option 2?
Yes, option 2
Service
provides us 24-hour coverage out of the station.
So you feel okay. So you feel for that extra $50,000, $45,000, we're seeing as significant. I will be supporting the motion, but I would like to also understand what is our risk if we chose option 4, which was no change whatsoever.
If we chose option 4, I think what we would see is we would see further challenges for the fire department to meet its service delivery demands within the community. You're going to see more burnout and volunteer retention issues. We're going to see, the call increase is going to continue to grow as we're seeing on the rate. As the report highlights, in the past 10 years, we've seen a 68% call increase, which is substantial. And I think that's going to continue to go up. Another area that is impacted is where our career staff's involved. They respond to after-hours calls in our traditional model. And that is a significant impact to them as well, just based on staff burnout, to having them come to station, go to calls periodically at night, and then come work a 12-hour day. These are things we have to take into consideration of our staff as well, not to mention the overtime commitments that brings too.
Thank you. Yeah, very much. I wanted to reinforce that. Going back to our CFO, could you please comment on, again, looking at tomorrow night, and again, I continue to refer back to page 6, and page 6 had roughly budgeted in, anticipating that perhaps we were supportive of this. If we did not support option 2, which states that it's $198,800, how much would option 3 be this year from a budget standpoint?
Thank you through the chair. So the draft budget that's being introduced tomorrow night is compiled based on the recommendations that were made during service review. And during service review, we did speak about option 2 explicitly, and we recommended a phased 3-year approach, which is in year 1, you're seeing that almost $200,000 increase to support the paid on call transition. If we were to look at another option, the cost implications would differ. And so just to be clear, are we considering option 3, paid on call per call payment?
Well, yeah, and yes, correct. So I'm trying to understand the financial consequences for 2022. I understand option 2's financial consequence, which is $198,800. I'm trying to understand what option 3's consequence is.
So option 3's consequences is approximately $200,000 in year 1, but I believe that may be slightly understated for the benefit load that we do require to add.
Okay, so roughly the same. And I'm comfortable as long as the number is the same based on option 1 or 2. I'm not worried about $1,000 here or there.
Roughly, yes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions. I just have one question here for you, Brian. I just want to be very, very clear in my own head. And that's on page 92 of 160. It's your financial considerations. And you talk about 2022, the estimated expense of $199,000, close enough. 2023, implementation of a pay-per-call initiative to support large-scale or multiple call responses at an estimated expense of $56,000, in addition to the full annual expense of the night shift at an expense of $268,000 for a total of $324,100. So that's on top of 2022. Like, these are just additive numbers as we go along each year then? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, correct. The phased-in approach, obviously the 198 that's presented for 2022 is a prorated rate that'll give us, I believe it's 275 days of coverage moving. It's estimated from April 1st till December 31st. When we look at the whole annual rate of 365-day coverage, we're looking at a $232,000 hit. And combined with the paid on call initiative that we're looking to present in year 2, which would allow us to have, again, for those large scale incidents where we need more than one apparatus on scene, that would provide us with another roughly $56,000. And then the benefit load that Ms. Hepting was referencing earlier regarding payroll.
Okay, gotcha. So just a quick question and I want to clearly understand this because for finance, Jen, so do we start tucking money away for the future years because they're pretty significant jumps, right? Future councils?
Absolutely. So in part, Mayor and Council will be considering a 5-year financial plan, and we will be highlighting the financial implications of this phased-in approach over year 1 being this year, year 2, and year 3. So the draft financial plan is prepared with the expectation that in year 3, we will have fully funded this model as it has been proposed.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you very much, Jen. Councillor Parkinson?
So I thought I was crystal clear, and then your question kind of threw me off. But what we're seeing here, 2022, the total cost is 198. 2023, the total cost is the 324. It's not adding on the initial 198. It's total of 324, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. Just wanted to be sure. Thanks.
Seeing no other questions, I will call the question. All those not in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Seeing none, it is adopted unanimously. Thank you very much, Brian, for your time. And keep up the great work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think I'm going to do a it's halfway through here. I'm just going to take a 5-minute break. So if I can get a health break. So can I get everybody back at 8:47, please? Okay, thanks very much. think we have everyone back now. Councilor Day, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So we'll continue on. We'll go to item 5.4, Parks and Rec Master Plan implementation. If I can get Ian Barhill to introduce the item, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a lot here, so I'm going to proceed rather quickly and make myself available for any questions the committee has. So the report before you is to seek council direction on a number of priority actions intended to advance implementation of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. As committee will recall, the city adopted its first Parks and Recreation Master Plan in 2021, and individual park plans are now under development, with the first set of draft plans for Buffalo Creek, Lookout Lake, and Ocean View Parks scheduled to be presented to council on February 14th next week. Committee should also note that in all cases, staff are asking for a mandate to take next steps, which will include additional reports with detailed background information and options to be brought back to council before final implementation decisions are made. Staff are seeking direction on 8 areas that would strategically focus the city's efforts on securing land, funding, and third-party partnerships to advance implementation of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan in 2022. As outlined in the staff report, many of these actions have already been recommended in the Parks and Rec Master Plan itself. The first recommendation is to compile a comprehensive 10-year Parks Capital Plan to achieve recommended actions contained within the Parks and Rec Master Plan and the draft Waterfront Stewardship Plan, and return to council with a draft 10-year capital plan in 2022. The second is to assemble new draft bylaws to institute development cost charge regimes for future funding of park acquisitions and improvements. Third is a recommendation that council designate the city lands located at 3698 Machosen Road for the implementation of future new parks and recreation amenities, including an indoor recreation facility and athletic fields. Fourth is for council to direct staff to explore options for the trading for all or a portion of the lands located at 3698 Machosen Road to other landowners for land that provides increased ability to implement new parks and recreational amenities, including an indoor recreational facility and athletic fields. Fifth is a request that staff be directed to explore options with the provincial government and the developers of Royal Beach to achieve a foreshore lease for the purposes of expanding the city's waterfront park system. Sixth is a recommendation that council authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to execute an agreement between the city and Parks Canada to accept funding to support work related to the potential creation of a new national urban park in Colwood. Seventh is a request for direction on including the joint School District 62 and City of Colwood Dunsmuir Hard Surface project in the draft 2022 capital budget. And lastly, staff is requesting council direction on the allocation of funds in the draft 2022 to 2026 budget for park improvements at Colwood Creek Park, Lookout Lake Park, and Ocean View Park. As securing ways to site and pay for new parks and recreation amenities is fundamental to implementation of the master plan. Staff seek creation of a new parks DCC bylaws as an immediate priority for the first half of this year. We also believe that work to expand the city's waterfront park system through a new provincial lease is to be another immediate priority so that the city can begin to align parks planning efforts with the developers of Royal Beach as soon as possible. This encapsulates all of staff's requests for direction as outlined in the first page of the report before you. Thank you for allowing me to summarize, and my colleagues on the finance team and I are available to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, questions. Councillor Baxter. You're muted, Mike. Michael, you're muted.
Thank you. I have no questions. I support all but one of the recommendations. And I think they're a good set of recommendations, and in particular, the priority attached to having a Parks DCC, I completely support. I hate to look back and think of all of the money we could have accumulated for parks had there been a Parks DCC since, say, 2 years after incorporation. So the sooner we get on that, the better. So I would like to move the recommendation minus item 3. And that's because I don't feel it's necessary to reserve those lands. Nobody's going to sell them without our permission. I think I like the idea of exploring options for trading, but I don't think it's necessary for us to reserve our own lands in advance. So I move the recommendation except for item 3.
Okay. Councillor Day?
Thank you. Question for staff on the extension of the waterfront lease. Have staff considered whether or not this might leave the city liable in the event of an environmental catastrophe such as a landslide?
Thank you for that question, and through the chair. Those types of liabilities would be fundamental to the process of developing options for council with regard to a new waterfront lease. And we've already started internal discussions about how we could approach those types of those risks and address them as part of the package that would return to council if committee recommended advancing this forward.
Great. And I also was wondering about the land trading. I have some concerns, but I'm assuming that any such endeavor would come back to council with full reports that we would be looking at, correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you. Can somebody explain to me Parks DCCs and the need for dedicating this land as well? Would the Parks DCCs not be set at a point that funded the Parks program, or somehow, I don't know what that land's worth, so, a bunch of millions of dollars? Do we need to add that to the kitty to make it all worthwhile?
Thank you once again for that question, and through the chair to Councillor Parkinson. The Parks Development Cost Charge bylaws would essentially set rates of contribution as new development was brought online here in Colwood. The land that sits at that location, 3698 Machosen Road, really is put forth in this report as something that's available to implement the recommendations of the Park and Recreation Master Plan. And staff's wording in the recommendation regarding reserving it is simply intended to ask council for a statement of your intent for those lands, so that we can focus on work that would see them developed or traded for parks and recreation uses.
Yeah, I guess. So I guess I'm envisioning that in South Latoria South, there's going to be a pretty sensational facility, recreation facility, between the elementary school, and it looks like there'll be a turf field there, and the Quarry Park that Gablecraft will be developing. So there may in fact be, let's say that the city decided it needed another few acres to expand that and have a place for some kind of building and structure and a couple other things, who knows what. I guess the question then is, if that was the intent. Let's acquire a few more acres adjacent to Quarry Park and the elementary school. Do we have to sell or trade land to fund that, or would the DCCs not? Would that not be an eligible cost within the DCC program, and therefore it's going to get funded? Maybe some timing issues, but I'm just not sure that we're not double bookkeeping here. If we sell land and we do DCCs, do we need both?
Thank you for that question through the chair. Yeah, those types of questions would be addressed through the analysis that would go into the development of a development cost charge program. When looking at what's recommended in the Parks and Rec Master Plan to meet the community need relative to Parks and Recreation provision that other municipalities provide their residents, I would argue that we need to apply all of the instruments at our disposal because of what we have foreseen through the Parks and Rec Master Plan as the need. So there's some significant new facilities called for, including major new sports fields, as well as a 15,000 to 30,000 square foot indoor facility in the South Colwood. So those are big ticket items, and I would argue that we need to look at all options at our disposal.
Okay, well, I'll wait if I'm around when this comes back. I'll wait and see what the DCC thing looks like. But otherwise, I can support the motion. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I have one, and I look at this completely differently right now than it's sort of related to what Councillor Parkinson just said right now. If we were to trade off our land that we own, the 10 acres or so on the Chosen Road, basically we traded off. We don't get any gain because it's got a value to it right now. You know, be it $1 million an acre or whatever it is, say $10 million. But what's more important to me is the recurring revenue of what we could actually put on there. And if we were to trade this off, and we're going to trade it off for parks, which do not create revenue, we don't have that recurring revenue source. And as we know, we already have an issue right now that 94% of our taxation is from residential, 6% from commercial. So just fundamentally in principle, this is why I'm having all kinds of problems with this right now. We're basically giving away, basically a recurring revenue source for a cost source now, because parks cost us. They don't create revenue. So that's where I'm having difficulties with this. And I mean, if it could be shown that we could do this with DCCs, great. I'd rather see that than sell off that asset. But that's just my comment. And if I'm seeing this wrong, tell me, because I just, like I said, it's to me that acre, our land that we own is, not only is there a capital gain that we get out of this, but it's potential recurring revenue. Just my comment. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. I just would like a comment from staff on the Dunsmuir hard surface project and the 2022 capital budget. Do we think that's a project that could actually come to fruition within this calendar year, or is that optimistic and it should be looked at in a future calendar year?
Thanks for that question. Through the chair, the project is very much in its earliest stages in terms of discussions with School District 62. At this point, really the idea has been hatched as put forward in this report and the accompanying appendix that shows the table that was discussed by the School District Board and City Council. We could certainly look at what's possible if this is greenlit by council and return with some timelines. I think that certainly the intention is that if it's included in the 2022 capital budget, it would be completed within the calendar year.
Good with that, Councillor Perkins? Okay. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand your concerns, Councillor Kobayashi. If you look at the parks created in Royal Bay so far, I mean, yeah, it's true. There's a lot of land there that's devoted to park that could have been built on, and therefore we would get recurring revenue from it. But I think we need the parks. I think the parks are really important for the mental health of people. So what I'm hearing you say, Councillor Kobayashi, sounds as if you're against parks. But I think you're going to deny that. So
yeah, no, you've interpreted that completely wrong.
If I may finish, I would just like to understand why you would be against creating parks in one way and not in the other.
Because there's a different way of going about it right now. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, so you have this piece of land. It's 10 acres, right, on Machosen Road. It has the potential, if you were to put some clean industry or wherever, you know, per square foot, what you could gain in revenue on a recurring basis, you can actually start purchasing other land. But then by selling this off or trading it off for parkland, how do you create revenue from it? You can't create revenue. You're trading off land, you make a park. A park does not create revenue. So I'm just saying that there's different models to do this, because we had specifically asked staff at one time to look at what is the best way to use this land? What is the best way? You know, what should we zone this for? And we've never had everyone got busy and it never got done. So my point is that this can potentially create it could be a recurring revenue source. We're running out of revenue opportunities here. All our future revenue is tied up in building more homes. Homes equals taxation. You know, taxation equals revenue. But right now, if you give that away, like if you start trading it off or just building parks, we don't have that recurring revenue source. That's the point I'm trying to make. So for you to say that I'm against parks is just totally incorrect. But there's a different way. Could be a different model on how we can attain this. I'm all for it. Good stuff. But create the revenue, then do the spending. Don't spend and then because you know where the revenue is going to be created, it's higher taxation. That's the point I'm just trying to make, Councillor Baxter. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jensen.
For the record, I'm not opposed to parks either, but I was going to say there's, and I know we removed a portion of that pursuant to Councillor Baxter's motion there, but I do want to hear these ideas from our Chief Administrator, Mr. Chair. So how is the best way to leverage that? Perhaps it's borrowing against it to build or purchase somewhere else, and then we still have it in our basket over long-term periods of time. But I mean, whether we have a 10-acre asset here or we have a 10-acre park, I mean, it's still a net asset for the community. I get your revenue generation side of the argument, but I'm in favor of the motion and would love to vote on it here.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. I guess, Councillor Kobayashi, I guess I'm struggling because I guess I'm thinking of it differently. And I'll use Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Parkinson talked about how we have the new Royal Bay elementary school and that, and perhaps we need to find a couple acres in the middle. Well, what staff are talking about is, at least my understanding, is selling the 10 acres or portion of the 10 acres to buy the 2 acres between the school. On the 10 acres would be taxable development. So you're right. We are losing taxation if we take that 2 acres out that's beside the elementary school. You're right. Absolutely. We no longer get that taxation. But the way I interpreted this was staff are talking about trading this land so that things get built on this land. Not that this land, this 10 acres turns into a park. And I would like staff to confirm that or say that I'm off base on that, because that was my understanding of what was going on. And when we talk about using this land, we're talking about using it to leverage it, and that developers will actually develop on this land. Mr. Earl? Oh, so I'm sorry, I'm not chairing this meeting.
Mr. Earl. The chair recognizes Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. The recommendations in the report are to reflect that our recreation master plan, which council has not adopted, calls for the city to move forward on a number of new parks which have substantive land needs beyond these 10 acres. There are 2 specific areas that are identified for large athletic areas. One is the Allendale area. The second is the Royal Bay area. And so administration is seeking direction to dedicate these 10 acres to recreational purposes, which aligns with our rec master plan, which is the guiding document that administration currently uses, but then to work with other landowners to see if we could trade land for land to better align where we want recreational services. And so there may be opportunities for us to co-locate near schools or other existing and or planned facilities in a way to better leverage. And then depending on who we're trading with, the use of the land would need to be rezoned. And depending on what occurs on that land, then the taxes would flow accordingly. So absolutely, as Mayor Martin has described, if we were trading to find better recreational lands, it is likely that the use of the lands that we traded away would not be public, and they would be therefore taxable.
Okay, that's thank you very much, Mr. Earl. I didn't understand it when I read the report. I interpreted it totally differently than that. Thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you. So I just want to be really clear that I am not at all in favor of selling our land. And my reasoning is simple. The longer you hold it, the more it's worth. Land is rapidly becoming scarcer and scarcer, and it's going to be very difficult for the city to hold that land. There's going to be lots of every single endeavor that we ever find ourselves short of cash for, is that piece of land is always going to be looked at because it's a big visible asset that could be liquidated at any given time. It has plenty of access. So my concern with that is that we get the highest and best use in our community and the best possible value for the assets that we have. So the longer we hold on to it, the more it is worth. And I do think that we have to start finding a way to afford what we need in our city through ordinary means, not through liquidating assets or, robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I am concerned about that. And I'm also concerned about the partnership with the school district, but I'm not going to oppose that here tonight, just that I'm putting everyone on notice that it isn't always a smooth relationship. School districts have their own issues that they have to deal with. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what they're doing, but we don't have any information on what that would look like yet. So I need to see what that looks like to make sure that we, for example, when it came to fields, fields under the school district control are very much more difficult to share because they have different requirements and different union contracts that they have to fulfill. So just a brief example that it's not any ill will at all. It's simply sometimes the functionality of a school board and a municipality are different and require different things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. So the motion that is on the floor right now is the staff recommendation less item number 3, which is that, and that council reserve the city lands located at 3698 Machosen Road for the implementation of future new parks and recreation amenities, including an indoor recreation facility and athletics fields, and Parks Rec Master Plan recommendations C4, C11, C14, and C15. That is the motion. I think because that there's some differences of opinion here. Councillor Baxter, would it be okay if friendly amendment, I would maybe like to sever and just go through each of the items. If that's okay, you'll get your way. Okay. So if I can get you to withdraw your motion, I'll do it that way.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start off at the top here. I'm sorry, this is going to take a little longer, but Councillor Jensen, go ahead, please.
I was going to say we could just sever that one and do the rest, just as a matter of expediency.
Well, I have problems with number 4 too, so.
Sever away.
Okay, so let me sever 3 and 4, and then I'll put that as the first motion. Okay, we'll do item 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so let's do that. So can I get a motion for approval of items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8? Okay, Councillor Jensen. Okay, discussion. I'm just gonna. Oh, Councillor Baxter, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to move it.
Okay, so that's the motion. A discussion on items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Seeing none, I'll call the question on those items and those items alone. All those against. Seeing none, I will consider those items approved. So I'm going to go back to items 3 and 4. So again, item 3 is, and that council reserve the city lands located at 3698 Machosen Road for the implementation of future new parks and recreation facilities, including indoor recreation facilities and athletic fields. And
So-
you had spoken to that one, Michael, already, that you were not in agreement with this. Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
can we sever 3 and 4? Do them
Yeah, that's
separate?
what I did. So I'm
No.
addressing,
Separate 3 and 4, so we
Yeah.
do them separate.
yeah, I'm just doing number
Oh,
3
okay.
right now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, discussion on 3, Councillor Parkinson, please.
I'm going to support this. I hear the concerns everybody has about giving away land and doing this and that. On the other hand, I was very happy with the Parks and Rec Master Plan. I thought it laid out a very thoughtful and complete vision for what we should be doing with parks. And so, there was a need in a couple of places for some land for parks that this property may help us acquire. I'm still not clear whether we could just go out and buy land and make it a DCC thing, and what that would mean for a parks DCC. Might make it stupidly expensive. I don't know. So I'm not saying we should liquidate the lands and go buy land right away, but I think that we should say, here's an avenue that's well worth considering and exploring if we want to achieve the goals of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. So I'm going to support these. I certainly understand the reservations of a bunch of my colleagues, but let's give it a chance to see if it works and if it makes sense. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to hear from Mr. Earl briefly. I'm getting hung up on the word reserve here, which to me sounds like to the exclusion of everything else. Like, are we just exploring these opportunities, or do we actually want to set it aside and not consider any other option based on this motion?
Chair Kobayashi, may I respond?
Oh, please. Sorry. Chair recognizes Mr. Earl. Thank you.
Thank you. Administration would treat this motion as a signal to begin advancing that portion of land accumulation for the items that the Rec Master Plan has suggested, and begin exploring specific locations where it might work. The word reserve is notional and directional, and by way of resolution, council could unreserve and dedicate to a different purpose. This really gives staff the direction to begin moving forward with those components in the Rec Master Plan that needed land.
I'd love to hear what you come back with, and so I get it, we're not married to it completely, but I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Baxter.
I support everything that Councillor Parkinson said, and I think everything that Councillor Parkinson said supports number 4. But I would ask Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Jensen to consider, if we have number 4, why do we need number 3? Number 4 says that we will explore the idea of trading to create parks. Why is it necessary to reserve? And here's why I don't want to reserve. We're going to have a housing workshop shortly. And one of the ideas that might be explored in that workshop is that perhaps we could use some of our land to create affordable housing. We might not approve that. We might approve it. We might not have a majority in favor of that idea. But there are ideas like that, and maybe other ideas of what we could do with this land. And why would we, on the basis of this one report, say, nope, we're reserving this land for this one use and we will not consider it for any other use? We already have item 4, which says explore the swaps. We don't need number 3, and number 3 is exclusive. So that's my rationale for voting for number 4 and against number 3.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm just wanting to share that I'm very uncomfortable with reserving for parks use. We have, of course, not enough parks. We know that from our master plan. I'm really glad that we did the master plan, but there are other ways to fit things in. And once we are designated as a park, it makes it much more difficult to put up buildings or even if they are park related and recreation related. So I think it is important, and I won't be supporting number 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. I will support the motion. I do understand what Councillor Baxter is saying, and it is a little repetitive, but I do think it's fine by it. I guess the reason I chose to speak and the reason I want to comment is the way I have interpreted this motion is saying if we ever sell the land, this 10 acres, what we're saying to staff, what we want you to do with that money or assets or whatever it is allocate it to parks somewhere else. So what we're doing is we're giving instructions to staff to say, this land itself is not a park. This land itself can be whatever this council or developers choose for it to be, and it will create X amount of revenue. What they're saying is, when we take this trade or money or whatever we get, we're going to dedicate that to parks so that we begin doing that. And I think that's a great approach. This is land that was given to us by the developer. And I think using it as a city asset for parks, not specifically on that lot, but within the jurisdiction of Colwood, is brilliant. And I'm highly supportive of it. I'm done. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. So my issue is that it's not clear. I mean, obviously there's a lot of interpretation going on here. There is. And I just want to reiterate something that was a commitment that was made to us as a council. There was, staff were supposed to at one time have looked at that 10 acres and come back with a recommendation on the best way to use it. So we got one recommendation back. So what gives? And this is what angers me. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to, at this point in time, call the question. All those that are against this motion, please raise your hand. So 3 against, Councillor Day, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Kobayashi, and Councillor Jensen, Councillor Parkinson, Mayor Martin, and who am I missing? Oh, there's only 6 of us. Sorry about that. Are 4. So the motion fails. Okay. I'm just gonna lower everyone's hand here. And we'll go with recommendation number 4, and that council directs staff to explore options for the trading of all or a portion of the lands located at 3698 Metchosin Road to other landowners for the land that provides increased ability to implement new parks and recreation amenities, including an indoor recreation facility and athletic fields. That's Park and Rec Master Plan recommendations C4, C11, and C14, and C15. Councillor Jensen.
I was just going to make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I will be voting against this because I think we have the cart before the horse. I do understand that we are in this one report trying to find ways to fund parks and recreation for Colwood. But by doing this allocation to Parks and Recs only of an asset that's held by the city of Colwood, you are effectively freezing out arts organizations, other needed infrastructure in Colwood by just wholesale saying, here, we'll take the jewel out of your pocketbook and it's going to be just for parks. And I'm a huge fan of parks, but I don't think that's the right way for the city to allocate our resources. We can't carve them up and say, this is the favored son and they get the goodies. And then when we get to the last kid behind the door, we got nothing for them. So I think when we dispose of assets, it needs to come to the city. And when we make a decision to fund something, it needs to be from the city and not from one specific asset that we hold. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Parkinson?
I might be a little slow on this one, but does anybody know what the recommendations C4, C11, C14, and C15 say? I guess I was thinking this was all South Colwood, but maybe not. If that's handy, we useful. Otherwise, I could live without that information if it's hard to get.
Mr. Borhill, do you have a response to that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on page 2 of 7 of the staff report, there's a table 1 that provides an explanation of what those recommendations entail. So that's page 98 of 160 in the package.
I know I saw it someplace. I was looking for it.
Apologies, I should have picked that up.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this particular motion? Mayor Martin? I see your
Thank you.
hand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So if I've heard from councillors that they're not interested in using this to fund this. So can staff tell us how would we fund C2, C11, C14, and so on without these lands? Would that be directly through taxation, or is that other options?
Through the chair, taxation would be certainly one option in terms of more likely, financing, for example, debt servicing associated. So a high level, I mean, we could be looking at reserve funding, we could be looking at debt financing, which would then need to be serviced most likely through taxation. As with anything, we always explore if there's grant opportunities.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Just a note from Councillor Day, potentially DCCs. Is that what you wanted to say, Councillor Day?
It is. We were talking about potential for a dedicated parks DCC as well.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly through the chair, absolutely. So as we explore a Parks DCC program and define projects that would be eligible within that program, they would most certainly be DCC funded eligible.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other hands, I will call the question. All those not in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And it's Councillor Day and Councillor Kobayashi. So Councillor Jensen, Councillor Baxter, Mayor Martin, and Councillor Parkinson are in favor. So the motion passes. Lower the hands. So we got through that painlessly. Okay, item 5.5. It's on development cost charge roads. And I'll have Mr. Earl, our Chief Administration Officer, introduce the item. And I believe you wanted to sever this one also, Mr. Earl? Is that correct? Look at each of these one by one, or?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. Specifically, the last item, number 6.
Okay.
I'm going to be asking Council to remove from the recommendation. Item 6 is no longer needed. If Council is desirous to sever any of these and vote on them individually, that would certainly support the decision-making process. So administration tonight is seeking to advance several road DCC related decisions. Recommendations 1, 2, and 3 consider the order, the pace of DCC road projects, including their revenue and delivery. Recommendations number 4 and 5 seek to move specific road DCC projects forward in 2022. And as I said before, recommendation 6 should be struck from consideration. As background, in 2021, Council established a new road DCC bylaw. And within that bylaw, there were several road projects that were envisioned to be constructed over the coming decades. Administration is now seeking approval for the order of construction, and that's to be used for planning purposes only. The actual approval for road projects, as Council is well aware, occurs as part of the financial plan. So Appendix 1, which is included in your document this evening, is a draft order. Column 11 would show the approximate year of construction using a 40-year build-out, and column 12 shows what the joint memo recommended for the build year for those projects that were considered within the joint memo. And we provided column 12 to provide comfort that projects that the joint memo envisioned would be built in time to achieve what those were needed for. Further, specific portions of projects 20, 22, 28, and 34, as they relate to bike lanes and sidewalks, would be built in advance of this schedule as per previous council direction. And that's primarily Machosen sidewalks and bike lanes and Lagoon, which are on this list, and they are specific projects where we've been given direction to move forward. And again, the actual approval of any road project will always be part of the financial planning process. Administration is seeking to use a 30-year estimate for DCC revenue based on our history of how many units we believe we're going to be seeing in the next few years based on the backcasting our 3-year and 5-year averages, and then taking a 40-year delivery approach to create a buffer between revenue and delivery. And those can be considered in Appendixes 2 and Appendix 3. And both using the 30-year estimate for revenue and the 40-year estimate for project delivery, again, are for planning purposes. And we would use that to guide our financial planning process and our infrastructure delivery process. Beyond that, we're also seeking specifically to move forward with Project 4, which is the Machosen at Latoria intersection in 2022. And this project we're recommending be funded from the DCC reserve. And Project 14, which we're recommending to be funded with DCC credits. With Project 4, again, that's the intersection of Machosen at Latoria, Gablecraft and Seacliff would jointly construct the intersection and receive cash from the city's DCC reserve. Appendices 4 and 5 are supporting information for that project. And Appendices 6 demonstrates information, raw data from our traffic dashboard that demonstrates the current state of traffic congestion for this intersection over a week in January of this year. With Project 14, Gablecraft will construct this project, but would receive DCC credits rather than cash from the city, which could be used as a credit for future DCC road payments. As indicated in the introduction, recommendation 6 is no longer required as Seacliff has determined not to move forward with this particular project in 2022 as the intersection of Machosen at Latoria will achieve the needed improvements to support the Seacliff side of that intersection. So administration has endeavored to provide the information necessary for council to consider these recommendations, and we would be pleased to answer any specific questions that you have. We are seeking committee's consideration of recommendations 1 through 5.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Earl. When you're describing the Machosen Latoria intersection, you said that Gablecraft would be compensated with cash from the DCC reserve fund. I'm just curious, they are doing a lot of building. Why would we give cash instead of DCC credits?
With this particular intersection, and as shown in Appendix 1, this is very high on our list, and it would have been a project that we would have recommended moving forward with quite early relative to the other DCC projects. Our DCC reserve has been created through monies received from development cost charges to provide for projects such as this. And so that's primarily the reason that administration would recommend a cash as opposed to credit. The instance of credit would be where a developer wants to advance a project in advance of the timeline that the city would normally want to do it. And in those instances, we would recommend that council consider offering DCC credits rather than cash.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Day?
No, I'm sorry. It just really doesn't, because we're playing this game of passing money to the developer for constructing the DCC thing, and meanwhile they're going to be paying us DCC amounts for the homes that they're building that will be DCC eligible. So I don't understand why we would do a cash transaction rather than just do the accounting for the credit.
Well, I mean, the alternate, I guess, could be the city could build this project using the DCC cash. You know, we have the benefit in this instance of a situation where both Seacliff and Cablecraft are desirous to move this project forward as it advances their developments. And through that, we can gain potential economies of scale as they are developing other projects in the region and moving forward. And so that could result in a lower cost to the ratepayer for actual project delivery. And the municipality benefits in these instances as they provide the managerial oversight for the project, and the city does not have to. But certainly an alternate would be that the city could deliver the project rather than having Cablecraft and Seacliff deliver the project and cash trading hands.
Okay, thank you. And there's seems like only the joint memo is referred to when we're talking about DCCs, and there were a number of historical intersections going back as far as 1999. For example, Wishart and Latoria was identified in 1999 when the master development permit was put on Royal Bay, that intersection would fail, that it needed a left turning lane, and that it would require improvements, and now it's not even on the list.
Sorry, the intersection of Wishart at
Latoria. Yeah.
It is on the list. I believe it's number 11.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Mayor Martin?
Thank you. So I just have a question, just in regards to Machosen and Latoria and the intersection improvements. The work gets done now, but it's a 15-year build out for Royal Beach. Through that 15 years, there's a significant number of construction trucks and things going through that will impact that intersection just because there's a lot of construction going through that. Is there any responsibility to the developers to maintain that intersection, or once it's ours, and we just have to maintain if the trucks are really hard on that corner? I'm just asking, I'm just curious, just from a policy standpoint, how that normally operates.
Once the city takes ownership of an intersection, it's ours to own and operate. And we often use permitting systems such as soil removal fees to capture additional revenues when we have a belief that a large volume of trucking may have a negative impact on a roadway. And so there are mechanisms that the city can use beyond taxation to recoup costs such as you're describing.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a real good start to a real complex process that councils are going to have to keep an eye on as things evolve, as depending on the speed of growth and stuff like that. I'm encouraged to see that the budgeting shows the DCC bylaw or DCC funds remaining in the black throughout the whole process. I see we might have some challenges with the sustainable infrastructure funding, but that probably isn't a surprise to any of us. So I'd be quite happy to make the recommendation number 1 through 5, make that motion.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Parkinson. So I just have a quick question, Mr. Earl. Thank you very much. This was music to my eyes, I guess, to see this. You can actually see the big picture here, what was happening. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much. The one question that I do have is the 1% assist column. Is that the sustainable infrastructure money? Is that what we're talking about here? I assume that's what that is.
The sustainable infrastructure money is the tax expense column.
Okay.
And so every year, council transfers money into our sustainable infrastructure reserve to recapitalize our infrastructures. Part of that transfer is to cover the recapitalization of our roadways. And so it is tax that flows through that fund. The 1% assist, municipalities have the capacity to make that 1% a different number. And so there are some municipalities who are quite desirous to use infrastructure investments to assist in the economic renewal of their community. And they might make the 1% a 2% or a 5% or a 10% for a particular project where they see a community benefit outside of the ordinary.
Okay. Thank you for that, that explanation. Perfect. Councillor Baxter, sorry, didn't see you there.
Yeah, I just want to propose a small amendment to the motion, which is to move project 6, which is VMP at Kerndale, to 2023.
One, two, three, four. I didn't think we had a 6.
The 6th line in the spreadsheet.
Oh. On the spreadsheet. I thought you were talking council motion.
No.
Pardon me. Let me just pull that up again here.
Just as a point of order, aren't we talking about 1 through 5?
Yeah, we are.
For what page?
It's on the table, Appendix 1, right, Michael?
Yeah, project 6 in Appendix 1, move it to 2023.
Chair Kobayashi?
Yes.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, Appendix 1, and administration is happy to make moves as described by Councillor Baxter's motion to reorder this list. This list is for planning purposes. And so once we establish a list, it would then move through our financial planning process, which would describe for us our ability or lack thereof to execute in any given year. And so while on this list, we will move project 6 up, and then it will go through a further set of processes to determine whether or not we have the financial and operational capacity to deliver in that given year.
Totally understood.
So do we actually, Mr. Earl, do we need a motion to do that? But we don't need do we need a motion right now for that? You could just do that, right? I believe.
Administration is in motions 1 through 5, one of them is to adopt a list as a notional direction for planning purposes. If committee this evening wants to alter the list, we very much support you in that process.
Okay. So Councillor Baxter, you are making an amendment to that list right now, correct? That is the motion.
I'm proposing an amendment, yeah.
Okay, discussion about that. Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that. And it's scary to think we want to get into this list and start, slicing and dicing. I understand Mr. Earl says we'd love your direction, but he wouldn't love it if it's 4 in the morning and we're still moving things around back and forth. I personally wonder whether the projects on VMP have been accelerated too soon on that list. And I wouldn't be looking at moving them forward. I would think I could make an argument to move them back. You know, I just don't think I'm ready to get to that level of detail. I love the fact we've got a list. I understand that we have to sort of review it as we get into it in more detail. We've got work in front of us for the next couple of years. At some point, this council or future council has to sit down and perhaps reorder priorities. But that's a long and involved discussion that I suspect my good friend Councillor Jansen is going to cut it off at 10 o'clock anyway, so we never get very far tonight. If council wishes to really debate the merits of the order of this list, we better set aside a few hours some other time for it. So I'll vote against Councillor Baxter's amendment.
Let history record that Councillor Parkinson refused to get into detail tonight.
Councillor Jensen, please.
That's awesome. And Councillor Parkinson is accurate. I'm going to oppose going past 10 o'clock, so let's get cracking. And as far as the Carindale intersection, Councillor Baxter, like, there's no point in even entertaining that until the VMP is twinned. Otherwise, we're doing it twice.
Can I speak to that?
I would like to move on, actually, please.
Yeah, but I just to point
go
out
ahead.
that
Councillor Baxter, go ahead, speak to that.
I've been doing this a lot of years, Councillor Jensen, and you simply move the poles to where they will be when it's 4-lane, and then you don't need to move them later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I really think that list does need perhaps a standalone meeting to go through, because I have a lot of feelings about that list. And when I looked at it, I went, there's no way we can talk about that tonight. So I was hoping that I could safely assume that any jockeying of the list would come at a later meeting. I appreciate there's a lot of work gone into just assembling a list. That in itself is an accomplishment. But I can also resonate with Councillor Baxter's desire to move that up, because I do use that route regularly, and it only takes one left turner to back it all the way halfway down Carindale Hill. It is a real problem, and lately I don't know why they don't know how to drive the other way home.
So I'd like to make a suggestion at this point in time. Then, if I can get this back on the agenda just to discuss this, we can take the time out in future committee of the whole to do this, because we still got one item here, and I don't want to go too much past 10 o'clock, because Councillor Jensen will turn into a pumpkin on me. So anyways, may I suggest that we do this with your permission, Councillor Baxter? Mr. Earl, could we have a separate, could we put this back on the agenda just to discuss this list in the very near future?
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. If there was an amendment to the motion on the table to sever 1 and only vote on 2 through 5, administration would return with number 1 at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Who made the original motion? Can I get a friendly amendment to that motion? Who made the motion? Sorry,
I think I made the motion.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Parkinson?
Very much so, yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to call the question right now because I want to get to the next item, and then I'll look for a motion to extend. But can I have those not in favor of accepting 2 to 5? Seeing none, motion is carried. So I need to get a motion just to extend the meeting. We're going to be done in 6 minutes here. So just so we get consistency here, Councillor Baxter has made the motion to extend the meeting. Is there anyone not in favor of doing this? We should be very short here, Councillor Jensen. Okay, thanks very much. Motion's passed. We will extend.
As a point of order, we're all back again tomorrow night.
Yeah. For a
Yeah.
different subject, a different subject. Okay, I'm gonna ask Jen Hepting to introduce the last item, taxation policy update, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. Committee, you have before you tonight a briefing, and it's regarding consideration for the tax policy strategies that staff administration will follow this year. Specifically, we have taxation guidance policy that outlines a number of strategies for consideration each year when we set our tax rates. One of those strategies is, as you are well aware, is that of a proposed reduction in our Class 6, our business or commercial tax rate multiplier or ratio. This strategy was introduced in 2020. And in 2020, we did reduce our business tax rate. In 2021, ultimately, the tax rates that the city adopted, we increased our Class 6. I have provided in the briefing some background information, and the reason that this is before you is twofold. One, we are at the onset. It is the eve of budget deliberations, and so if committee is willing to make this recommendation, it is helpful to staff as we move throughout budget deliberations and comment on the impact of any proposed or draft property tax increase. And the second reason really is just for consistency in how we are communicating the impact of any potential property tax increase, again, throughout deliberations, which are scheduled for this month and into next month. I would be pleased to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter. You're muted, Michael.
Move the recommendation.
The recommendation is that Committee of the Whole to recommend to Council that any shift of property tax burden between property classes in an effort to reduce the business class tax ratio be suspended in 2022. That's this year. Councillor Jensen, you had your hand up? No, Councillor Parkinson.
I'm struggling with this. We'll all recall a couple of years ago where we decided that the tax rate multiplier, tax rate ratio, whatever the correct term is, for commercial to residential was higher than the CRD average, and we wanted to move it to the CRD average over a 5-year period. And in the first year, it took a significant jump. And then in the second year, last year, we went back and we said, well, let's put it back on the program of the even steps over the 5 years that we had originally talked about. And so then we raised it, the ratio last year. Now we're in a situation where we deliberately decided to alter the ratio of commercial tax rate to residential tax rate. We felt that was important to our businesses. We felt that it would enhance Colwood's competitive attractiveness to businesses and attract more businesses. Now we've heard many times on many subjects the importance of creating a commercial tax base in Colwood. How much of an effect this has on the commercial on the number of businesses coming or staying in Colwood, perhaps is arguably not that much. Apparently, it wasn't a significant item in the business surveys that were done as part of the how are we going to deal with COVID discussions. I also think that the information we have is telling us that because commercial properties went up so much less than residential properties in Colwood, actually some businesses were paying less taxes before. Our predominantly residential tax base does skew things. But I, for one, stood up and said, I think we should change our tax rate multiplier to the CRD average, and we should do it in this way over 5 years. And I'm reluctant to step back from that, especially after I bumped it last year saying that it was justifiable because it wasn't the program we initially agreed upon. I think that if competitiveness in tax rate is important today as it was before, we might have to tough it out and then make a decision. And it's going to mean an increase in residential taxes, but it means that we meant what we said and said what we meant a couple of years ago. So I'm struggling with the concept of backing away and ducking from the original concept that we as a council supported. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think it's the right decision. And my reasoning, I do understand the optics of having a multiplier for business class properties that is higher than other areas of the capital region. But the reality is that the best way to keep businesses in Colwood is to patronize them and to do things that support businesses, networking, advertising. Most of the businesses in Colwood are leased spaces. They're not likely to have any tax savings passed on to them through their lease. And it's so variable, as we saw last year, and Councillor Parkinson noted, in a year when we were struggling with COVID to try to make sure that we made good on our promises without doing anything, their taxes were going down anyways, based on business classes being assessed differently. So I think that we do want to support businesses to be in Colwood, and I think we have found some pretty good ways to do it. There was huge uptake on the sandwich boards and other initiatives that we've taken. And going forward, I think we have to look carefully each year because there's just too many variables for it to be a straight answer every year. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. I will support the motion. The business analysis that came out, creating affordability seemed to be the big issue for our businesses here in Colwood. It wasn't about the taxation. And just anecdotal, and this is completely anecdotal, in 3 years that I have been mayor, I have not received one business who came to me and said, my taxes are too high, I'm leaving your community. I'm sure it's happened, but nobody's ever reached out to me to say that. And as much as I would love to drive our business costs down, unfortunately with COVID and everything else, I just don't think this is the time for it. So I will be supporting the motion. But I do appreciate Councillor Parkinson's approach.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, who made the motion?
Councillor Baxter made the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so not seeing any more hands, I am going to call the question. Can I have that show of hands for those that oppose the motion? And may the record show Councillor Parkinson has opposed, and the rest of us are in favor of the motion. Okay, on that note.
Move adjournment.
Done. Councillor Day, thank you very much. See you all tomorrow.
See you all.